Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto Uzumaki accepted a deal that changed everything and faced a female Itachi Uchiha, Naruto times Itachi times Kurama, Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The next day when Kakashi walked into the Hokage office, the third looked up and asked, "Where is he?" Kakashi. Kakashi sighed and said, "We were on our way back when he informed us Root were following us and he believed it was an ambush. After confirming they were following us, he said he wanted to protect us by using himself to draw them away, but he gave this to me to give to you. They used forbidden jutsu. Imprisonment of the damned on him, sir, and he ran off and we lost his trail at the Valley of the End. We showed up right as they used it on him and took them out, and we confirmed they were indeed Root, sir, and Inoichi has one in Ibiki's office right now." The third narrowed his eyes and said, "Where are the rest of the team, Kakashi?" Kakashi said, "I had them all go to the hospital to get checked out after dropping the prisoner off at Ibiki and to check up on the boy guy brought back who was saved by Cage, sir." The third opened the scroll and read, "Hello Hokage-sama. I am the leader of a group of refugees that have decided that they want to have a new life. We have decided to form a new hidden village and are currently in discussions with several feudal lords about where it is to be built and should be finalized within the next year. I know normally a new hidden village does not tell about itself until it is prepared for a possible attack and all, but you see among the people who are helping us are several people with connections to Konoha, either professional or personal, though I won't go into details about who they are out of respect for their privacy. I am giving you this information as hopes that our village and Konoha can form an alliance in the near future. You have already seen a gesture of good faith on our part as the current trade alliance you have with Spring Country. I hope you will respect our privacy and we will respect yours until we form an alliance, and please call off you Root dogs, because ever since one of our members was listed in your bingo book there have been a total of 47 attempts on his life by Root Ninja. 11 of those times they used hostages trying to force him to surrender. 9 times they tried to put him in traps, 7 times they have tried to assassinate him, and the other 20 times were just flat out attacking him or following him for days until he would tire out so they could ambush him. If you are scared of him, I should warn you that he is not the only strong person in our group. We have 12 cage level shinobi and are gaining more every day who are at least shunin or better. We don't want to sound like it's a threat, but should any harm befall him because of Root, we will take it as an act of aggression against our village and will not only inform Spring Country of these act but also sign ourselves with either Cloud or Iwas, who would be more than willing to accept us since they have heard about us gathering missing nin and either retired or private ninja for hires. Know this, most of our higher ranking individuals knows and can perform the Rasengan and Hiraishin, so if you fear one person who can do it, what will you do with 100 of us who can do both and perhaps share with our allies? Sincerely, you're the Shadaime Cage of the hidden village of." The third paled at this and said, "Danzo may have just caused the destruction of the Leaf Village. Call the council immediately." To Kakashi, who nods and leaves. 1 hour later the third walked into the council chamber with 10 ABNU and said, "Danzo, what do you have to say for not only attacking 3 clan heads but also the attempted murder of a diplomatic missionary for another hidden village who was being escorted her to offer an alliance with Konoha?" Making everyone look at the two. Danzo said, "I know nothing of what you are talking about." Inoichi said, "It's no use, Danzo. I caught one of them and he is currently being interrogated by Ibiki, and all 24 of the men you sent had your Root Elite insignia on their arms, and everyone knows you use a special ink that can't be copied." Danzo said, "Fine. I admit that I had my men try and assassinate him because he was a threat to my Leaf Village, and guess what? As proof of my men's faith in me, kill the Hokage." Suddenly 3 council members jumped forward, as did 2 of the ABNU, while Danzo shushined away and attempted to kill the third, only to be killed by Kakashi, Yamato, Inoichi and Guy, who had wore an ABNU uniform. The third said, "Signal all men to track down and capture Danzo, and if he resist, kill him." And the other ABNU bowed and left, and the third said, "Any of you who feels that Danzo should be leader of this village had better not come to the next meeting, because if I find out any of you have connections to him and his dealing, I shall have you tried for treason and executed publicly. If you don't come for the next meeting, have you letters of resignation on my desk, and I will not do anything to you unless you betray the Leaf again." And turned, leaving the group, who were stunned. 2 months later, Angel sighed as she looked around the village. Gato had only recently turned up in Wave and he had yet to make a move. She was walking around the village when she saw Nan along with Kisame and Yugito walking toward her and she said, "Hello Nan. I see you found her and made it, though I am surprised you're here so early." Kisame, who looked like a normal man's skin color, said, "When we found Yugito here, a group of civilians were trying to kill her, so we had to fight to save her, and that attracted the attention of Bolt and they chased us for a few days, but we finally lost them and decided to come here and help." "Where's the brat?" Angel sighed and said, "I don't know. We met up with Kakashi and a few of the others and he sent me here to keep an eye on the Gato. Apparently Danzo set up some kind of ambush for him, and when he went to keep the others from being involved, they used an interrogation jutsu on him that screws up the mind until you come across something that triggers it. Jiraiya came and found me after he heard about it and has been looking for him but has yet found him. The third confronted Danzo about it, but he managed to escape Konoha with around 50 men. I would have gone to look for him, but he asked me to do what has to happen here, and if we miss this chance then we lose 5 years of work. Sadly." Nan narrowed her eyes and asked, "Where was the last location they saw him and how long ago was this?" Making all three of the others look at her. Angel said, "It was 2 months ago and they lost track of him at the Valley of the End. I swear every time he shows up at that place he's up afterwards." Nan sighed and said, "Kisame, I want you to stay and help train Yugito here and work with Angel on whatever she needs. I am going to go and see if I can get any leads on him. It's time I put some of that ABNU training to use." Kisame said, "You're not going alone." Nan said, "Look Kisame. Angel here can probably take Gato no problem, but we can't afford for anything to happen to Yugito here." Yugito said, "Why are you treating me like a kid when you basically the same age as me?" Nan said, "Yugito, you're good but you are not ready, and besides I have a personal reason to be involved. Remember you promised me that you would listen to us and I need you to do that now." Yugito sighed and nods and Nan said, "I will find him." Angel said, "Nan wait. Take this." As she pulls out a scroll and hands it to Nan and said, "That contains that sake you all drunk with his memories. It might help." Nan nods and takes off to track down Naruto. 1 month later Nan was walking through a town about 10 miles away from the Valley of the End when she heard the sound of a disturbance in an ally. She went to check it out. Being an Uchiha meant being trained as a police officer and investigate everything. What she saw as she approached the ally made her blood boil and her eyes turn cold. 3 men were kicking the hell out of a little boy who was in a fetal position trying to protect himself from the blows, and one of the men said, "You should have stayed in Konoha, demon," as he kicked the boy in the face, making the boy cry out in pain before passing out. Nan moved faster than she had ever moved before, burning a kunai in the heads of all 3 men, killing them, and she looked down at the mess of red and blonde hair and gasped at the blood coming out of the boy's head. She knelt down and checked him and saw he was still alive but was out cold. She looked around and saw that his cloths were all over the place, but she noticed that all of his scrolls were gone and looked at Naruto's arm and smiled, seeing the quick summoning seal there, remembering that he invented a seal that automatically called all his storage scrolls to him, so if he had to leave quickly he would not leave his stuff. She swiped a little blood off of his body and wiped it over the seal while channeling chakra into it, and suddenly 20 scrolls appeared and she picked them up and pocketed them before picking him up and shushing away. 3 days later Naruto groaned and sat up and found himself in a bed and looked around and saw a plate of food on a nightstand, and he quickly grabbed it and started to eat. A giggle brought his attention to the door and he saw a girl about the 13 looking at him with a cat in her arms, and she said, "Hey grandma, Nan, he's awake." Naruto stopped eating and quickly swallowed it and had to hit his chest a few times, and Winston looked down and saw that he had bandages around his chest and he asked, "Where am I and who are you?" The girl said, "Oh me. I am Tabi and you're at my family shop. You're lucky Nan found you or you might have died." Naruto looked confused as the girl stepped to the side and a black-haired girl started to come in and he asked, "Who's Nan?" And the black-haired girl stopped in mid-step and looked at Naruto and said, "Tabi, can you give us a few minutes?" Tabi said, "Sure Nan." As she turned and left and Nan closed the door and asked, "How much do you remember Naruto-kun?" Naruto scratched his head and looked around and asked, "Who's Naruto?" Nan walked over and said, "That's your name." Naruto looked at her and said, "Don't cry Nan." Nan looked at him and asked, "What?" Naruto said, "Your eyes. They show you're about to cry." Nan smiled a little and said, "At least you're not totally lost." "Okay, I am going to change what I look like and I want you to tell me if you can remember who I look like, okay?" Naruto scratched his head and said, "Okay, Nan. Can I ask first why you're doing this and how do you know me?" Nan said, "I am doing for you what you would have done for me, and that's all I will say until you remember who I am and not just know my name as Nan from hearing someone call me that." Naruto sighs and nods, and over the next 5 hours Nan changes into Iruka, Sasuke, Kakashi, Sakura, Angel, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shikamaru, Ayame, Tazuna, Orochimaru, Kabuto, Kiba, Anko, Kurenai, Hinata, Shino, Deidara, Tobi, Kisame, Inari and Yukie and the third Hokage, and all came up with no recognition. Nan sighed, tired from using henge so much, and Naruto said, "If you don't mind, I am a little tired, Nan." Nan said, "Sure, Naruto-kun, go ahead and get some sleep," as she got up and left the room. As Nan walked into the front of the building, an old woman with cat ears and a cat nose looked at Nan and asked, "So how did it go, little one?" Nan shook her head and said, "He does not remember anything yet, Calico. Maybe it will come back in a day or two," as she looked outside at the night sky. Calico said, "So what are your plans about your family? I drank some of the boys' sake and know what's going on, though for a woman such as me it does not work." Nan sighed and said, "I suppose not, considering what you really are. My family owe a great debt to you and your kind, and I fear if things turn badly that debt will be forever unpaid." Calico said, "Child, I know why you did what you did and I do not blame you. I have one of my kind in Konoha and know the truth." Nan snickered and said, "Tora, right?" Calico nods and said, "Yes, dear, Tora tells me all and my granddaughter laughs at some of the stories she hears. Perhaps if you told him the truth, child, he will remember." Nan looked at the wall and said, "Perhaps, but I am not ready to admit it to myself yet." Suddenly a cry of, "No, don't hurt me, I am no demon, please stop, somebody help me," echoed throughout the house, and Nan ran toward Naruto's room and opened the door and saw him in a fetal position, Aegean moving as though he was being beaten, and she walked over and put her hand on his face, slowly rubbing his whiskers, and whispered in his ear, "Shush. It's okay, Naruto-kun, they won't hurt you, Aegean. I promise." Naruto quitted jerking and slowly turned from whimpers of fear to light purrs, and he mumbled, "Chio, I've finally found you." In his sleep, and Nan frowned a little and slowly took her hand away, and he whimpered a little and she had to stifle a giggle and sighed before laying down beside him and rubbing his cheek, Aegean, as he set into a blissful sleep. The next morning when Naruto woke up, he saw a note on the bed beside him and he picked it up and read, "Naruto-kun, come find me on the cliff 2 miles south of here. Nan." Naruto sighed and got up and headed out the door when Tabi stopped him and handed him a basket and said, "Take your time," as she turned and left, leaving Naruto confused. About an hour later, Naruto soon found a cliff and was walking toward it, thinking about why it felt familiar, when he saw a person standing there, and the person turned and he froze in his spot and said, "It can't be," as he suddenly fell to his knees holding his head, screaming out in pain, and the person ran over to him and said, "It's okay, Naruto-kun. I am here." Naruto said, "It can't be, you're dead, this can't be real," as he was holding his head, shaking it back and forward. The person said, "Naruto-kun, stop and look at me," in a commanding voice. Naruto stopped and looked up at the person, and the person reached up toward their face and slowly pulled off a mask and said, "Do you remember me, Naruto-kun?" Naruto was quite a moment and said, "I don't know, I am confused." "You, Nan, but you also look like Chio. How can that be possible?" Nan asked. "What do you remember about Nan?" Naruto held his hand to his head and said, "Nan is an Uchiha. Her family treated her like shit and she killed them all but her brother because they forced her to act like a boy." Nan nods and asked, "What do you remember about Chio?" Naruto thought a moment and said, "Chio was the only true love in my life. She and I were alike. I had the Kyuubi and she had the Rokubi in her, and her family treated her poorly and she killed them for making her a Jinchuriki and for the way they treated her." Nan nods and asked, "Was there anything special about Chio that would make her stand out to you?" Naruto thought for a moment and said, "She had a strange tattoo on her back." Nan turns around and slowly pulls her shirt off her back, and Naruto got wide-eyed, and Nan pulled it back on and turned and looked at Naruto and asked, "Do you understand now?" Naruto was quite a moment and said, The Atsuki did not take you because you were with them. Was it all a trap or a lie? Are you really a Jinchuriki? Nan sighed and said, yes, I am Naruto. My grandfather sealed the Rokubi into me the day I was born. My father told him that I was a boy when in fact I was a girl, so he would seal the demon to make a weapon of me. You may or may not know it, but the Rokubi was a weasel demon and Itachi means weasel. It was my father's way of rubbing it in my face every day. He also named me Nanchio Uchiha to remind me that if I ever went against the Uchiha clan I would face hardship forever. They wanted to make me the most powerful ninja I could be so that way they could take over the Leaf Village, because after Madara killed the Sandaime, the Nadaime passed a law saying no Uchiha could be Hokage until it was confirmed Madara was dead, but after the clan found out I was a girl they refused to accept me for who I am and forced training and more training on me. I thought if I could get their approval then they would let me be, but it was never enig. That along with what I already told you is why I truly killed my clan. Naruto was quiet and said, what about us? I mean, was that real or what? Nan said, I believe that I had feelings for you in the last life and I took the way I treated you as a sign of it. I never did hurt you at any of the times we met when others I did, and I believe that I knew my life was almost over and I wanted to be with the man I loved just once, and that is why I met you here. This land is owned by the Uchiha clan, and from your memories this is the Holy Land place that Jiraiya-sama brought you to, so I believe that I was doing the mission the Hokage had asked me to and be a spy on Atsuki to protect you because he never knew I was a Jinchuriki. If that was the truth then we were real. Naruto was quiet and asked, do you hate me, Nanheim? I mean, you know how I feel about you and all. Nan shook her head and said, no Naruto-kun, but I don't know if I love you yet or not. I know I have feeling, but I don't know if it's love yet or simple admiration of what I saw of your life and of what I know now. Can you give me time to sort this all out? Naruto said, sure. That's something I have plenty of and so do you. Nan smiled and Naruto sighed and said, there's something else I should tell you that you may not like and it will probably make you hate me. As he looked down, Nan asked, what is it you're talking about, Naruto-kun? Naruto asked, Nan, can Roku be here and see everything you can? Nan was quiet a moment and said, yes, though my seal is different than yours. Instead of drawing a little over the long time, mine draws a lot at short times. My seal once every 6 months gives me 1% of its power and the rest of the time I can't touch it. Why? Naruto said, Nan, there is another reason I had you and Kisame go to Cloud to get Yugito. When I went to meet the Shinigami with Kyuubi, he did something to me and I was able to hear Kami. I was told that he believes it's time to pass on the torch to the next Gordians. Nan was confused and asked, what does that mean, Naruto-kun? Naruto sighed and said, you see, originally demons lived in one world and spirits in another. Eventually both began to grow tired of never having things change, and so Kami created this world as a way to allow both humans and demons a chance to live and experience something new, because he was afraid that both worlds would destroy themselves eventually. After a lot of trial and error he created a way to please both and to control a balance, but he needed a way to keep the balance where he would not have to watch over it and he could enjoy viewing all of his creations. The spirits were born as humans and then the demons were allowed to come here through summons. That's right. All summons are actually demons and they have a king that rules over them, or currently I guess you could say a queen who is named Avacleen. Now the Shinigami takes care of the humans that come from and return to the spirit world, and Kami is over both, but he needed someone here to watch over the humans to keep things balanced and in control. That is where the tailed demons came in. They had a tournament in Demon World to decide who would come to this world to ensure that while both humans and demons were here none would break the laws set by Kami, which are only a few to begin with. The tailed demons were the winners of the tournament. The rules are simple. Humans are not allowed to gain immortality. Demons can't use more than what would be considered B-rank jutsu for demons, and if someone or something prepared to destroy the world, it was their job to eliminate the threat. That was all the tailed demons had to do. The tailed demons were allowed to affect the way humans grew here in the earth, and by giving either gifts or knowledge. They first gave the knowledge of chakra to us and later on they created the first bloodlines as gifts. As you know from my memories, your bloodline was created by Kyuubi and the Hyuga bloodline was created by Nibi. What you don't know is that if Yugito died with Nibi still in her and she has not either passed on Nibi powers to another or had a child, the moment she died every Hyuga would immediately go blind. Nan was wide-eyed as she realized what he was saying and she asked, So if you were to die, I would go blind along with Sasuke. Naruto said. And Madara, yes. Your bloodline, though it was born to you, still has a small amount of Kyuubi power it has to draw on to work, and as long as the power is still in this world, then it would work. However, now that you understand why it is important for the power of the tailed demons to go on, I can tell you why this matters to the Jinchurikis and me. You see, after Angel and I explained what we wanted to do, Kami decided that the time of the tailed beast were over, and so he decided that he wanted to send the tailed demons back home to a well-deserved rest, but he does not want to cause all the humans who have bloodlines to suffer, so he has decided that they are to pass on their powers. The ones who are sealed have to give their power to the one they are sealed in, thus freeing them, and they can either return home or stay here and live out their life as a human, though they must pass on their summoning contract to the one they give power to. Nan thought a moment and asked, so what will happen after that? Naruto sighed and said, you remember how the drink I gave you made you immortal. Even if you canceled the jutsu, you would still be immortal with the same rules about being killed until you have at least 100 descendants, either by giving birth to all 100 yourself or through children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, but there have to be 100 of them living on this planet at one time. After that you can cancel the jutsu and die a normal death. Nan was quite a moment and said, so basically I am stuck here unless killed. Naruto said, yes, and so am I. You just have to release the demon inside your mind and don't worry about it killing you, because they can't now, as the moment he heard me tell you he or she had to pass on its power, it was powerless to do otherwise. I am sorry, Nan. Nan asked, what will happen to me? Naruto said, when you release the seal, you will have the summoning contract for the weasels appear on your arm, and you will get 3/4 of the weasel's power, and since you got shapeshifting from me because of the fox, you will get something special from the weasel, but what exactly I don't know. You're not the only one though. I have to have Yugito and Gaara do it also, and then I have to track down the other tailed demons who are either sealed or still free and have them do the same or pass them on to a person they feel is worthy. Nan asked, what would happen if I chose to give Rokubi power to someone? Naruto sat there a moment and said, you would die within a year. As you know, humans can't handle that much power at one time, so there has to be a seal to control how much is released. If you chose to give it to someone, they would get a small amount, and a seal would start to appear on them over the next year as you get weaker and weaker until you die, making your life the cost for the seal. Nan sighed and asked, what will happen after we have 100 descendants at a time? Naruto said, from what I am told, Kami feels that with 100 descendants at one time it would take at least 500 years to kill them all off, unless it was some kind of specific setup to take them all out. What you don't know is that bloodlines are not forever. Every generation loses 5 of the total bloodline unless you inbreed like the Hyuga, and then they lose 2 eventually, either birth defects or the bloodline will become so thin that they will cease to work. There are exceptions, thought, like the Inazaku. Nan looked at him and asked, what's so special about them? Naruto said, simple. They were not given a gift of a bloodline. They are actually part demon. Nan was confused and asked, what do you mean? Naruto sighed and said, you see how Angel looks human. If say she had the Sharingan in her and she had a child, the Sharingan that the child was born with would never breed out like yours or Sasuke would eventually. However, if the weasel in you decided to, he or she could make yours where it would never breed out. Angel did that with mine. That is why they can sleep with anyone and they will still carry the traits of their clan. Nan thought a moment and asked, what would happen if say you and I had a child together? Naruto was quiet and Calico said, then the child has a 50-50 chance of having either one, as would each of its children. As she walked toward them, and Naruto was in a defensive and asked, who are you? Calico smiled and said, relax, Namikaze. I am called Calico and I am here to see if your memory has returned. It's a good thing it did, because if what I heard is true, then my people need to know. Naruto was confused and was about to say something when Calico started to change and appeared to look like an old cat that was about 4 foot tall and said, I am the boss summon of the cat contract that Nibi will give to this Yugito girl. Nibi had instructed me and a few of my kittens to protect a few branch members of the Hyuga clan who wanted to escape. It came down to the time we watched only Madara, and then we watched his children protecting them and their secrets, though I am surprised to hear he still lives. We stayed here at the original home of the Uchiha family before Madara brought them to Konoha, and a few of us followed there, but I stayed here to guard this place and its secrets. Naruto said, then did you hear about passing on the power of the demons? Calico nods and said, I know, and I have a few years left in me, though the cat summons is smaller than ever, as there is only me, my sister Tora, and my brother Tom. I am not as powerful as I once was, but I am wise. My sister is a master at stealth, and my brother is a master of fighting. Tell this Yugito girl when she gets the contract to say one of our 3 names when she summons us, and we will appear, but don't call me for battle or Tom for his brains. I must go, or my granddaughter may burn down the store. As she smiled before walking away, Naruto sighed and said, I knew that cat was not normal. Nan giggled and grabbed Naruto by the head and gave him a noogie and said, Come on, Naruto-kun. The others are worried about you and we need to leave tomorrow. Naruto stood up after getting out of her hands and walked over to the cliff and looked at the valley and said, Nan, come here a moment. Nan got up and walked over beside him and he said, It's almost sunset, do you want to watch it with me just once? I have memories of us doing it in the future, but I never once got to see your face during it, and I would like to have that memory if you don't mind. As he slowly started to change height and build to look like he did when he was older. Nan smiled a small smile and slowly changed shape also to match what she thought she would look like when she was older, and he put his arms around her stomach and rested his head on her shoulder from behind as they both looked at the sun setting slowly. Nan smiled a small smile and took a deep breath and sighed and said, It's wonderful here, Naruto. Naruto smiled and said, Yes, you are, Nan. As he held her close. After they watched the sunset, Nan asked, What is the deal with you and Angel? I mean, you said that she could go back to her world, right? Naruto said, Angel made a huge gamble to bring me back in time. The only way for her to do it without us both being killed is by marring me, though we have yet to do it since I wanted to find true love first. She also wants to make sure Madara is stopped as her final duty as a guardian. Whereas I will live until I have 100 descendants at one time, she will only live with me long enough to have one child and have him reach the age of 12, and then she will return to her world. No attachments. We respect each other, but it will never be love because we secretly want to kick the others. Sadly. Nan looked at him and asked, Why? Naruto smiled a small smile and said, It's her way of getting even with Konoha, and as a way for me to remember her, since she does not know how long I will choose to live, and since I will never see her again after she leaves. Also because it's the way we are. Gaara and Shukaku have a fear relationship. Me and Angel have one where we hate each other, but if someone hurts someone precious to us or insults us, better pray that you can run to the gates of hell are opening up. Nan was quiet and asked, What do you mean by getting even with Konoha? Naruto said, Simple. The child will have all my pranking knowledge along with her mischievousness. Add that together in a child who has knowledge of all my perverted jutsu and the ability to shapeshift with my bloodline, and what do you have? Nan paled and said, Oh God. The prank master from hell. With her eyes wide open. Naruto smiled and said, Yeep, and his target is Konoha for what they did to me as a child. You ever hear the saying curiosity killed the cat? Looking into the darkness, and Tabi, who stepped out and said, It's a pleasure to see you're better, Naruto. Grandmother asked me to come and tell you dinner's ready since you most likely will be leaving tomorrow. Naruto said, It will depend on Nan when we leave. She might want to talk to her friend before we leave. Tabi smiled and said, I never been called her friend before. Thanks. And the 2 kids' sweat dropped and Nan said, No problem. Let's go eat. As she grabbed Naruto's hand and led him back to the store. After dinner, Naruto washed up before going to sleep, and he was almost asleep when he felt the side of his bed moved, and he opened his eyes and saw Nan getting into bed, and she said, The nights are cold and they don't have any extra blankets. Naruto nods and moves over a little, and Nan lays down on his chest and said, Good night, Naruto. Naruto said, Night, Tenshinhan Angel Princess. As he closed his eyes and fell asleep, as he did not notice the smile or the blush on the girl's face. That night Nan found herself in her mind, which looked like the Uchiha prison, and she walked down a corridor until she came to a door that said, Solitary confinement, and she asked, Did you hear what he said? A high-pitched voice said, Yes. I have already made your bloodline permanent and have given you a little gift to say goodbye, human. Nan asked, What is it? The voice said, Since I believe I know who your mate is going to be, I have made it where you get to decide which bloodline your children get, so if you want you can have all of his born or all of yours and then his, and I have also made it where you decided the gender for your kids as well. You can make it where you have one male for each and then have them go out after they get old enough and do 100 women each and be done with having to worry about this mess. Nan asked. So that's it. No, I will kill you speech. No good job killing your family. No, I respect you and hope you have a nice life. No, kiss my. The voice said. Why should I waste my breath? Nan smiled and said. Get the hell out of here, you bastard. As she turned the key and pulled the door open before feeling extreme pain and she screamed out. Naruto awoke to Nan screaming and he held her close to him and started sending his healing ability into her through his chakra and she soon stopped screaming but he continued for a little while until she was resting peacefully. The next morning when Nan woke up she found herself in Naruto's arms protectively and she got out of bed and stretched and felt most of her bones snap and she felt something behind her and she looked and sweat dropped and said, this could be a problem. Naruto heard her voice and said, withdraw the chakra on your tailbone. With his eyes closed. Nan looked at him and did as he said and the tails slowly disappeared and she asked, how did you know that and why are your eyes closed? Naruto said, in case you have not realized it, most of your cloths were burned off last night during the chakra surge, so I was trying to give you some privacy while you got some, unless you don't mind me seeing you in mostly rags. As he wiggled his eyebrows. Nan looked down and saw what he said was true and she just shrugged and said, I lost my modesty when I was about 5 when my father made me practice changing into training cloths so I would not reveal I was a girl. I never think about it now. Naruto said. Suit yourself. As he opened his eyes and sweat dropped and asked, so how did you get my cloths on then? Nan stuck her tongue out and left the room and Naruto shook his head and found his storage scroll and smirked before he channeled chakra demon chakra into his eyes and smirked a moment before he saw Nan put her hands together and suddenly there were hundreds of her all striking in a centerfold pose with nothing on but clouds of smoke. Naruto blew back into the wall from the nosebleed. When he awoke he found himself tied to a chair and saw there was 2 ninja wires going into the zipper of his pants and he looked up and saw the wires went through the holes of 2 shurikens, one on each side of the room and he saw Nan in front of him holding a bowling ball with a kunai in it and both wires were tied to the ball and she said, now this is what you get for being a pervert. And she dropped the ball and he closed his eyes gritting his teeth waiting for the pain to hit and he heard a ripping noise but felt no pain and he looked up slowly and saw his pants had been torn evenly and she said, gotcha. Naruto narrowed his eyes started to growl a little as tails started to pop out of his tailbone and said, of course you realize, this means war. As the wires holding him down suddenly were cut by wind chakra and Nan started to back away and bolted out of the room as Naruto took off after her and Tabi looked up as 2 blurs shot by and asked, grandmother, what was that? Calico smiled and said, young love. Suddenly a yelp was heard from outside and Nan's voice said, bad boy. Sit. And a loud crash was heard. Both women ran outside and sweat dropped as Nan had a rolling pin in her hands which were crossed and she had one finger tapping her arm and Naruto was holding his nose with one head and his head with the other and was sitting on the ground and she said, now are you going to be a good fox or do I have to treat you like a mutt Naruto-kun? Naruto said, no Tenshihime. Quickly much to the pleasure of Nan and she blushed after she heard what he called her. Calico said, well if you will finish getting dressed Naruto I will get breakfast for you and then you can leave. Naruto looks down and quickly runs back into the house but not before Nan whistles and said, nice. Making Naruto blush. Calico shook her head and said, well Nan. What will you do now? Nan said, we have a village to build and get set up and then training to commence. Tabi looked where Naruto went into the house and said, can I ride Foxy? All color drained from Nan's face as her eyes became slitted and said, Tabi, he's as mine so back down or pray you have had your rabies shot. As she got into a fighting stance. Naruto came out and asked, what's wrong Nan? Looking around for an enemy. Nan quickly stopped and shook her head and said, I don't know. As she put her hand on her head. Calico burst out laughing and said, I see so that's what happened. Nan looked confused and asked, what? Calico said, now that you have become the new 6-tail weasel you have picked up a habit of being obsessive over something you consider your property to the point you will fight for it. Nan said, but then why did? Oh, I see. Sorry about that Tabi, I don't know what came over me. Tabi said, no problem. Does that mean I can go for a? Her mouth was covered by Calico who shook her head and said, She is in heat right now and Naruto is the first male to come by in about 3 years, so don't mind her. Naruto started to back away and all three women looked at him curiously and he said, "You're not going to tie me to a bed and screw me until I am dead, are you?" Making all three women look at each other. Nan asked, "What do you mean, Naruto?" Naruto sighed and said, "Well, I remember when Hana commented that she was in heat, she was going to screw Kakashi until he was dead, so I thought with the way you were talking I might be in trouble." Nan walked over and hugged him and said, "Don't worry, you're not." As she slipped a kunai out of his weapons pouch before she realized what she did, and Calico said, "Don't worry. It will take about a day for your brain to sort out the weasel's thoughts and then you will be fine." She nods and everyone goes inside and eats breakfast and Naruto and Nan quickly left. About an hour later Naruto asked, "So when are you going to drop the shapeshift and return to normal?" Nan asked, "What do you mean?" Naruto said, "You turned your body into that of you in the future." Nan looked down and said, "And, so are you." Naruto sighed before he said, "I thought you might be embarrassed to be seen with someone short like me, after all I am still only 9. Nan smiled and said, "I am 14, big deal. My brother will be 8 in a few months, and when you are technically a demon, age does not matter, and don't worry about Yugito. I will talk to her when we meet the others and explain to her about having her demon change over." Naruto asked, "Not that I mind, but where is she and where is Kisame and how did you know what happened to me?" Nan smiled and said, "It's been 3 months since you were attacked. I found you in a month." Danzo fled the leaf with some of his men and a lot of the council members retired, since the third said if he found any of them had connections to Danzo he would have them publicly killed. Yugito and Kisame are both in wave with Angel. "I heard you bagged Sasori." Naruto nods and said, "Yeah, and I got 2 of his favorite puppets to use later." Nan looked around and stopped in her tracks and said, "What do you want to do about us?" Naruto said, "It's your choice, Tenshihime." Nan closed her eyes trying to keep from blushing and said, "I don't know why, but I feel safe with you. It could be that you know what it's like for me, or it could be that we are both tired of being alone, or it could be just physical attraction." Naruto walked over to her and put his arm around her back, pulling her closer to him and said, "Or it could be a combination of all three, and our love was meant to be, and no matter age or time period we know where we belong. With each other." Nan put her finger to her chin and looked at the sky and said, "I will have to think about that." Naruto smiled and kissed her, making her eyes go wide before they closed, and she returned the kiss and she pulled back and said, "There's no way in hell that came from a 9-year-old. Naruto said, "My mind is in its late 20s and my body turns to whatever age I appear when I shapeshift, and I prefer my 17-year-old body." As he was still only a few inches from her lips, though they were the same height. She asked, "And does that work for everyone?" Naruto smiled and said, "Yes." As he moved closer and continued, "You know that you're like a bad drug, right? One taste is all it takes to become." As he pressed his lips to hers and traced her back with his hands. She returned the kiss and put her hands behind his back, pulling him closer to her as they both enjoyed their kiss. Unfortunately, the ability to breath is a requirement, and eventually they broke apart, gasping for air. Nan, through half-lidded eyes, asked, "Why is it all my defenses go away when I am with you, and when I am not, you are on my mind?" Naruto shook his head and said, "I don't know. You not just on my mind, but you have consumed it." Nan pulled away and said, "We need to stop, because if we continue I won't be able to stop, and I am not ready for this." As she held her hand on his chest trying to put up a good front, though the tremble her legs gave made Naruto realize how close to going over she was, but respected her and said, "Okay." As he backed a few steps back. She smiled and let out a breath with her eyes closed when she felt herself being swept off her feet, and she squealed and opened her eyes and said, "It's a long way to wave, so let me carry you for a while." As he took off into the trees. She sighed and nods before laying her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat and thinking how they got so close so quick. A few days later, Angel was sitting in a tree looking down at the crowd, and Kisame asked, "Should we interfere yet?" Angel looked around and said, "Not yet. It has to be right, as they're about to kill Kaiza." Gato said, "And this is why you should never try and disobey me. I can kill you all, even if you are a feudal lord or a hero. Kill him." And two men drew their swords, and a single leaf floated into the cage where they were about to behead the man tied to a stake, and suddenly fire erupted from inside the cage, and there stood two individuals back to back with a kunai in the head of a swordsman that was facing them. Angel smirked and said, "Your entrance would have been good. Tier was better." As she looked and saw Naruto and Nan standing there, and both looked in their older bodies, and Naruto had his Arachnar cage look and said, "So did you hear enough?" Looking back over the crowd to a man that was standing on top of a building that everyone recognized as the feudal lord of Wave, Kanpachi Koi. Kanpachi said, "Yes. Please arrest that man and see to his punishment, and I agree to what you proposed." Cage smirked behind his mask as he grabbed Gato, holding him into the air by one arm, and said, "Yo Kisame, think you an angel can interrogate this little bastard and get some of the people of Wave their money back?" Angel stood with an evil grin and jumped from the tree she was hiding in and used Leaf Shushin to appear next to Cage and grabbed Gato and said, "I think a visit to all 9 levels of hell should do it." As she jumped up to where Kisame was. Nan turned and said, "Relax Kaiza, we're here to help." As she cut the ropes holding him in place, and Cage broke the lock on the cage, and Inari along with Tsunami and Tazuna ran in beside him, and Cage grabbed Tazuna and asked, "I heard you're a bridge builder, is this correct?" Tazuna was shocked a moment, and everyone was looking to see what these strangers would do, and Tazuna said, "Yes, why?" Cage said, "I have made a deal with the feudal lord, and I am looking for someone to build a bridge to the mainland. I have money and resources, so that way people like Gato will never be able to capture the people of Wave Aegean." A man in the crowd asked, "Why are you doing this?" Kanpachi said, "People of Wave, listen to me. I made a mistake in trusting Gato, but I will not make the same mistake Aegean. The man there is known as Arachnar Cage, and he has agreed to help the people of Wave by not only building a bridge to the mainland but also building a hospital who will be set up by the world-famous medic Tsunade, to school, as well as giving a trade agreement between Wave and Spring Country. In return, the people he is with are going to build a new village here in Wave to start a new life, and the village will also not only help the country recover but protect itself. I would like to be the first to tell you that the village shall be the ninja village hidden in the waves, and as a sign of trust they will not even start working on their new home until the new bridge is built." Everyone was stunned, and Kaiza asked, "Why are you wanting to build a ninja village here?" Making everyone look at him. Cage said, "Simple. You all have seen what happens when people are oppressed by evil people like Gato there. 95% of the people who will live in this new village have lived under the oppression nearly all their lives. Their leader has hired assassin to kill their children, poison their foods, beat them, and refused them the basics of living. It is for these people and all people who are treated unfairly that I have gathered allies to help create a new home for them. When I heard about Gato and looked what he done in other places, I refused to sit back and let him do that here, so I confronted the feudal lord and brought him here to see it for himself, so he can't be tricked by people who spoke of deals and never followed through. He wants what's best for its people. I want what's best for not only the people of Wave but the world." In a commanding, prideful voice of someone who leads an army who follow without a doubt. The people let out a cheer and said, "3 cheers for our hero." Cage flared his chakra, making everyone jump back, and he said, "I am not the hero here today. It is you and your family, your children, and the men who would not only fight to protect what is precious to them but are willing to die to make sure their family is safe. If you want a hero to follow, follow this man right here." Pointing to Kaiza. Cage then looked around and saw everyone thinking, and he asked, "How long would it take you to make up plans for the bridge of Wave Country, Tazuna?" Tazuna flinched a moment and said, "How big do you want it?" Cage smirked behind his mask and said, "Big enough for wagons to go both ways on the bridge, so that way the people of Wave will have not only import of goods, but once they get back on their feet and new jobs start as new industry come in, they can also export at the same time." Making everyone wide-eyed. Cage asked, "So how long?" Tazuna said, "I can have them drawn up in a week, but supplies might be a problem." Cage said, "In 7 days I shall have 20 ships full of material here to begin building this bridge, and I will pay you $15 an hour to supervise the construction of it, and I will pay $10 an hour to each person who works on labor, and $5 to any woman who want to help deliver food and water to workers, and everyone will get 2 paid 15-minute breaks a day and an hour lunch, in which I have a group of traveling ramen chefs who will cook for everyone who works on this bridge. Now if you are interested in it, then show up in 1 week's time ready to work." Anyone who would like to learn to be a medic at a hospital or a teacher at an academy, we will begin interviewing in 3 weeks' time. That's all I have to say, and have a great day. Thank you, Aegean, for coming, feudal lord. As he bowed and grabbed the hand of Nan, who was smiling, and they both jumped up into the tree. Angel was with a passed out Gato and Kisame. Nan asked, "Where's Yugito?" as she looked around. Kisame said, "She is with Tsunade, Shizune, and Haku." Kage sighed and said, "What the hell are they doing here already?" Kisame said, "They came here about a month ago after Jiraiya informed them of your disappearance, and they came here since this was the most likely spot for you to show up." Kage asked, "So where are they?" Kisame said, "We got a small house about 5 miles north of here hidden." Kage smiled and said, "Well, let's go meet the others so we can this party started. You want me to carry you, Tenshihime?" as he looked at Nan. Kisame said, "So you two finally together." Nan said, "Shut it or you will watch Ika Ika Paradise burn." Kisame nods and reaches into a pocket and said, "Pocky." Nan grabbed it and said, "Let's rock," as she jumped after Angel, who had a little shrimp tied up like a bull. Kage smirked and starts to jump away when Kisame grabs the back on his cloak and said, "Listen, kid. If you make her happy, I am proud, but to me she is the closest thing I have to family, and if you hurt her, I will kill you." Suddenly a rolling pin came flying out of nowhere and embedded itself into a tree right in the middle of both men, making them look at it and turn in unison, and saw Nan standing there and said, "Now do I need to educate you both on what I did to my clan?" Both men paled and said, "No, ma'am." Nan said, "Good," and the rolling pin came out of the tree and flew back to Nan, and both men saw that the end of the rolling pin was a kunia, and when it got back to her she said, "Kia." And the chakra strings that were attached to it cancelled, and she put a wooden handle on the part to cover the kunia end. Kage said, "Kisame, has she been like this when she was with you?" as he looked at her jump away. Kisame starts following and said, "No," and followed the rest of the way in silence. Angel heard all this and smiled to herself as Nan caught up with her, and she asked, "So how are you, Itachi?" Nan said, "The weasels passes on, and I am the new Gordian." Angel smiled and asked, "So where are you and the kit?" Nan cut her eyes at Angel and said, "A little more than you and him." "So have you thought of a name for the little prankster?" Angel said, "I see he told you about that, huh? I am not planning on having the child for at least a few years because I have something I want to see from him before I have him," as she ducked under a branch and landed on the ground. Nan landed beside her and asked, "What is that?" ignoring the passed out Gato. Angel said, "I want to see him become a father and experience the joys of it before I have one with him, because I want him to know how to be a dad so he can treat our child the same and to have siblings. The kid never had any of his own, and I want a child I have with him to have some, and to have something neither the kid or I had as children. A person to play with. It's my final goodbye to our child and him." Nan looked down for a moment and said, "I understand. You're not planning on going back to the summon world, are you?" Quietly. Angel glanced back and saw Naruto and Kisame talking about something and said, "No, did he tell you what would happen if you give your power to someone?" Nan nods slowly and Angel said, "The kid is not as lucky. I was a fool to think we could all the rules. When we came back in time, he brought his entire chakra with him, which was equal to me using 7 tails and my remaining 3 tails, because he had at least 1 tail of his own, and as he gets older and closer to the time we get to where we came back, it will add more and more to his system. The only thing keeping it from killing him is me currently. I told him I currently only have 25 of my chakra when I was released from the seal. The truth is I have all 100 of it, and he is drawing off his future chakra and add that to all the chakra he has from his training and using, and there you have it. That's why his control is so good right now. All the chakra you see him using is all his and none of mine. He won't know about it until the exact date we came back. On that date, all of my chakra that was in him that he had not absorbed will flood his system, killing him unless he somehow absorbs it all before then, which would be difficult. That is why I plan to start the ritual exactly 1 year before that day, and it will be right to the very second, so when the seal finalizes, it will take all he had not absorbed and all 9 of mine and lock them away for him to draw over the rest of his life." Nan asked, "How can you know when to do it?" Angel said, "Simple. It was exactly 22 years to the moment I was originally sealed in him. October 10th at 12:01 a.m. I attacked on October 9th at night and it ended on October 10th, but because of everything they forgot that part. Nan looked at Angel and said, but if that's true then. Angel nods and said, his birthday is actually October 9th. Nan asked, are you going to tell him? Angel said, no. He's had so much sadness in his life because of me. I can't add any more to it. A voice said, there is another way. Making both girls look and see Yugito sitting against a tree and look back and see Naruto being hugged by Shizune and Tsunade. Angel looked at her and asked, what do you mean, child, and how do you know it? Yugito said, Nibi told me that there is another way and said you still owe her a rematch for whatever. Angel smiles and asked, ask her what is the other way. Yugito eyes glossed over and then returned to normal and asked, you said that he has your chakra from the future and is correct. Angel nods and Yugito said, he's immortal now, correct? Aegean Angel nods, not understanding where this was going, and Yugito smiled and said, looks like the cat outsmarted the fox. You have already transferred your powers to him, meaning that all the bloodlines that require you are now drawing power off of him and not you. You are no longer needed. Angel thought a moment and said, but I have to marry him to make it legal. Yugito snickered and said, Nibi said you forgot to read the fine print, fox. You gave him the fox summon contract, correct? Angel nods and had a vein appear on her head, and Yugito said, then all you have to do is before his 10th birthday return to the summon world, thus sealing all your power you currently have in the demon world, and then have him summon you with a permanent summon seal, so as long as he has more than 5 of his chakra you remain here. Nibi said that has the power. And laughed as Nan had to hold Angel back from killing the girl. Everyone was looking at the girls and Cage asked, what's going on? An hour later, after meeting Tsunade and the rest and explaining everything, Naruto sighed and asked, so I have to absorb all that chakra before I am 22 and now we don't have to marry each other. Angel nods and Naruto said, are you okay with that, Angel? Angel said, truthfully yes, though I had wanted to have a kid with you to get my revenge, but I guess I can't have everything. Besides, we were friendly but we never actually loved each other. So should we get started? I should warn you that you will have to inform those who know I was your fiancé that I am a summon. Naruto said, actually, I would rather keep that a secret because I know when word gets out about my bloodline somebody will want to whore me out and I don't want to do that to mine and Nan's relationship, so if I tell them you're my other lover they won't be able to force me with someone. Whether it goes to marriage or not is something only time will tell. Yugito asked, will this transfer thing hurt? Naruto and Nan both said, like hell, at the same time making Yugito pale. Tsunade asked, Naruto, how are you going to absorb all that power before you're 22? Naruto sighed and said, I don't know. Currently I am using 50 times normal gravity, so that is both draining and recharging my system at the same time. I could do about a year of nothing but S-rank jutsu back to back, though that is stupid. Nan said, or you can alter the seal and have it force large amounts of chakra into your system every 6 months like mine did, except you will have to have 5 instead of the one I did. If you do that over the next 11 years you could have 55 of the chakra from your future self, and then using it to power her being here could make up say 25, which would leave 20 that you would have to use off somehow. Tsunade said, actually I might have a solution for the other 20 and it would make it easier to repair the damage to his coils after the 6 months hit. My Sozo says, Genesis of Rebirth. If he uses it right after he is flooded by the forced chakra, then it will restore the damage with the help of his normal healing factor, and then he can start storing more chakra into it again a few days later. Naruto said, well, that's the easy part, but we still need to know how to alter the seal, and we would need to know how the sealing on you was done, Nan. Nan said, I know where the scroll that detailed how it was done is located, Naruto. I have something important that I think you should know. I was not the only Uchiha that was to be a Jinchuriki. Making everyone look at her. Naruto asked, what do you mean? Nan sighed and said, I found out one night when I was 10 when I was looking through my family library a secret that I did not know about. You know how part of the hospital was destroyed the night of the Kyuubi attack, Naruto? Naruto said, yeah, my mother died in that incident. Why? Nan said, Kyuubi was not the one that destroyed that section of the hospital. The Uchiha clan did. Tsunade asked, why? Shocked at what she heard. Nan said, from what I now know, Madara did not just pick a date to attack Angel. It was planned out. My mother had a total of 3 children. Me, Sasuke, and a brother named Toby. My mother was forced to go into labor the 9th of October, and when Angel attacked, my clan destroyed the side of the hospital where all the infants were because they were planning to seal Angel in my brother, so they thought that if there was no other child then he would be used. However, they never got a chance to do it because the Yondaime had taken you away from the hospital and had already set you up, so when my father offered Toby he was denied. My father, after being denied, was going to use the same sealing method on Sasuke but could not find you at the time because the third had you hidden and the 10 days that he had to do it in passed, but he had recorded his plans in a scroll. Tsunade asked, "What happened to your other brother?" Nan said, "SIDS." Naruto said, "You know, Nan. The more I hear about the Uchihas, I think you're the only decent one to come out of the whole bunch," as he sat back in a chair. Shizune asked, "Where is the scroll that has the information?" Nan said, "In the Uchiha family vault where only 3 people can get." "I will go and get it in Konoha." Naruto said, "I will go with you." Nan said, "No, if you do then your plans to make everyone think you're weaker than you or will be ruined, and Danzo might get word you're still alive and attack you Aegean, and I can't handle that right now." Tsunade said, "I will go with you then. Shizune, I want you to stay here and help continue Haku training and Yugitos as well. We will leave when you're ready, Nan." Nan looked at Naruto and asked, "Do you want me to do anything in Konoha while I am there, Naruto-kun?" Naruto thought a moment and said, "Yeah, Angel, I need you to go with them in your human form and check up on Rin. Dad and Mom will be coming here soon, as will Dan and Nawaki, so have her start getting me all the info on the Rookie 9 and Guys team so I can be prepared." Angel nods and Nan said, "I guess that means we can go ahead and leave now since I want to hurry back," as she got up and kissed Naruto before leaving. Once all 3 of them were a safe distance away from the house, Nan sighed and walked over to a tree and sat down, and the other 2 looked at her, and Tsunade asked, "What's wrong?" Nan said, "I got 2 problems and I don't know how to deal with them." Angel asked, "What's wrong, Nan?" Nan looked around and said, "I started." Tsunade said, "Is that all?" Nan shook her head and said, "You don't understand. I don't know what to do because my father forbid anyone to tell me about it, and ever since I became the new 6-tail it's had a side effect on me. I am horny." As her face became flushed, Angel said, "And it don't help Naruto-kun is releasing pheromones either," making both women look at her. Nan asked, "What do you mean?" Angel said, "Simple. You have heightened senses now, so you can detect the pheromones his body is starting to produce. Right now it's nothing, but in about a year it will get to the point you will be almost wanting to jump him every second." Tsunade said, "Well, let me help you with a few things, Nan, and then we will discuss this pheromone stuff. It all basically boils down to this." 4 hours later, and 10 slide projectors and 4 life-size models that Tsunade pulled from somewhere. Nan was pale and Angel said, "Remind me to tell Naruto that if unwanted teen pregnancy ever becomes an issue, have you give education," as she rubbed her temples. Nan, who after learning everything came back all taken care of, and said, "Now what is this about pheromones and what can we do about it?" Still trying to get a few of the details Tsunade gave out of her head. Angel said, "Naruto and you are technically demons now. Everyone else who drank that sake are not. Only difference is you got tails, fangs and claws you can call if you want them, and the ability to attract mates. Now as such a male demon hits puberty at around age of 10, which for Naruto is in about 2 months, so his body is just getting ready. They start releasing a pheromone so they can attract mates. Until he has with a female, his body will continue to release pheromones and will get stronger and stronger, so you and Yugito will be fighting an urge to go at him like rabbits until either someone does it with him or you or with someone yourselves," in a bored tone. Tsunade asked, "Will any woman be affected this or just certain ones?" Angel said, "The only ones who will be affected will be someone who has demon blood in them who does not have a mate." Nan said, "So that is why Tabi was after him, and her grandmother said it was because she was in HEA. Oh shit. Naruto-kun can't go back to Konoha." As her eyes got wide a moment and then paled. Tsunade asked, "What do you mean?" Looking at Nan. Nan said, "Angel mentioned anyone who has demon blood in them will be attracted to him if they don't have a mate. There is a clan in Konoha that falls right into that category. The Inazukua clan." Angel said, "So that just means someone has to have with him before he returns to Konoha." Nan looked at her and said, over my dead body. As her eyes changed to a more round shape a moment before returning to normal. Tsunade sighed and said, "We will worry about that later. Come on." As she took off toward the docks. Naruto walked outside and saw Kisame questioning Gato, and he walked over and said, "So has he given any info?" Kisame smirked and said, "I gave him a little taste of Samahead's special ability and he started spilling his guts about anything and everything. I got this interrogation scroll Nan made to record it all. What should I do with him now since he's passed out?" Naruto said, "Well, let me read about what he has been doing and see if there is any useful information that we can use to help the people of Wave." As he grabbed the scroll, and Kisame nods and said, "I will lock him up inside the broom closet and put a seal tag on the door." Naruto nods, walking back in the house to read, and he blinks and looks up and sees Yugito and Haku looking at him, and he asks, "Is there something you need?" Haku said, "It's good to see you, Eiji and Kage-sama. How was your mission, sir?" Naruto sighed and said, "It was good. Has Tsunade and Shizune been teaching you well?" Shizune, who had walked in, said, "The girl is a spong. She has learned how to use chakra and has learned nearly the entire anatomy of a human and has began learning to heal minor wounds. She has also gotten where she can fight for about 2 hours in a spar, so she is getting better along with her chakra control and learning the basics of her bloodline. She is doing excellent." Naruto nods and looks at Yugito and asked, "So what about you?" Yugito said, "So far Kisame has had me working on chakra control and a few water jutsu, and I have a few jutsu I had learned from watching others in Cloud, but that's it so far." Naruto nods and said, "Between Nan and Raiga we should have you become one of the 2 main lightning masters of the village hidden in waves. I have things I must prepare for, so if you don't mind I will take my leave." And he turned before walking out of the room. Kisame asked, "What's his problem?" Shizune said, "He's afraid if he does not do things right then the village will fail. Tsunade told me she was afraid of the same thing, so I recognize his attitude." Kisame said, "He is really worried about this new village that much." Shizune looked around and made sure no one was around and said, "Jiraiya-sama, when he told us Naruto had went missing, informed us that Orochimaru has started his hidden village, and from the reports he got it appears as if he has the backing of someone with a lot of connections, though who it is I don't know. Apparently from what he has gathered Orochimaru is going to be even more powerful than we first thought, so he can't screw up or everyone he considered friends will die." Naruto, who was sitting outside, frowned as he heard this and thought, "I will stop him and anyone who hurts my friends and family." As he quickly summoned a small 2-tailed fox and said, "Take this to the names who's on each of the scrolls and hurry." As he handed 2 scrolls to the fox, who bowed before looking at the names and taking off. 3 days later 3 women were seen standing outside the gates of Konoha, and the guards said, "State your name and reason for being in Konoha." Tsunade stepped forward and said, "My name is Tsunade of the Sanin, and this is Angel, and this is." Nan stepped forward and said, "Uchiha Nan." Making the guard wide-eyed, and he asked, "What was your name?" Nan flashed her Sharingan and said, "Uchiha Nan." The guard said, "Oh, welcome back. We thought that all the Uchiha but Sasuke were dead, so it surprised me that you are alive." Nan said, "HNN. We wish to see the Hokage." The guard said, "Right, if you will follow me." Tsunade smirks as she left in a swirl of leaves, while Nan left in a swirl of black flames, while Angel left in a swirl of red flames. The guard jumped back and looked and told some ABNU what happened and to inform the Hokage. The third was at his desk doing paperwork when 2 bursts of flames and a swirl of leaves appear, and he was in a defensive formation until he saw Tsunade, and he eased up and asked, "Hello Tsunade, what are you doing here?" Tsunade pointed to Nan and said, "She just came by to get something from her family estates is all." The third looked at her and said, "I am sorry miss, but who are you?" Nan flashed her Sharingan and said, "My name is Uchiha Nan." The third looked startled a moment and said, "How are you alive?" "Itachi killed all the Uchiha except his brother." Nan sighed and said, "A friend saved me when my twin brother came to kill me, and together we killed him, though I got these cursed eyes from it." As they changed to the Mangekyo Sharingan. The third asked, "Wait, you're Itachi's sister. How? I never was told about you." Nan looked out the window and said, "I am the older of the 2 of us." My father did not want a female as clan head, so he sent me to live somewhere he thought I would never be discovered, but Itachi found out about me somehow and came to kill me, and luckily my friend had discovered where I was, and together after a long battle he was dead. I told him to take credit for killing Itachi so no one would know about me. The third nods and asked, if you did not want anyone to know about you, then why are you here? Nan said, there are a few scrolls that contain information about this eye in the Uchiha district. Tsunade here has been trying to help treat me because the eye causes blindness, so she thought if she got the clan's actual information on it she would be able to cure me. The third looked at Tsunade, who nods, and the third asked, who are you, miss? Angel stepped forward, transforming into a fox, and said, I am sure you heard about me. My name is Angel and I am the companion of Arachnar Cage. The third's eyes got wide and said, I see. How is he doing? Tsunade said, you're lucky, sensei. He's alright, though we want that information kept secret because of the new hidden village is dependent on him. The third was quite a moment and said, so the new village had been confirmed at a location. Tsunade said, yes, though it's just getting started so far. I came up with an agreement to help them get a hospital started there and to train some nurses and doctors. The third said, but you would not do that for the Leaf Village. Suan said, I tried to, if you would remember, and I did get the hospital up and running better than ever here, but as you recalled, the council voted against every idea for helping improve the doctors and nursing staff, so don't cry to me over it. The third sighed, knowing it was true, and he asked, can you at least tell me where the village is and who the cage is? Tsunade said, sorry, sensei. I promised that I would not say because they have family, and if word got out before they were ready, someone could turn everything they have fought and worked for into nothing. The third nods, and Nan asked, where is Sasuke? I don't want to meet him yet if I can keep from it. With an Uchiha smirk. The third said, I believe he's at the academy. Will you be staying in Konoha? Nan snickered and disappeared in a swirl of black flames, and Angel said, I got to head by a few of the landlords of Mr. K's property to make sure everything is being taken care of, so I will see you. And changed back human before leaving in a swirl of red flames. The third looked at Tsunade with a look that said, what the going on? Tsunade smiled and said, sorry, you have to wait like everyone else, though I would keep it as much of a secret about another Uchiha being alive a secret as possible, unless you want someone to try and kidnap her and use her for breeding stock. Make it an unconfirmed rumor if you can. Well, I need to head by the hospital and resupply a few things. CYA. And left in a swirl of leaves. The third said, I hate my job. Nan had appeared in the Uchiha district and walked to the clan head's house and opened the door, looking around, and could tell that Sasuke had a little tantrum based on the destruction in the house. She went to the library and got a few scrolls, and then she went to the secret Uchiha archive room and took the scroll telling about how to obtain the eyes. She then went back into the main house and got a great idea. Taking a kunai, she cut her hand and started to write a 5-word message on the front door in blood, and then after she finished she smirked as she quickly left. Hello brother, see you soon. Tsunade walked into the hospital and got supplies from basic equipment to medical books. She then sealed them in a scroll and left, since no one would dare challenge her credentials. Angel appeared in an apartment across town and felt a kunai at her neck, and she said, hello Rin. The blade slowly pulled away, and Angel turned and saw a student of the Yondaime Hokage in all her glory and said, we are beginning to build the village. Everything going okay here? Rin said, yeah, since Danzo disappeared things have quieted down. Angel sniffed and asked, why do you smell like Kakashi? Rin blushed and said, shapeshifting has its uses. I turned myself into one of the women from his books, and we've been dating for about 3 months now. I can't wait till he finds out it's me. Angel giggled, and Rin asked, so what's new with Foxy? Angel sighed and said, a lot of shit. Danzo men had him up to the point it nearly cost him his life. If Nan had not found and saved him, he would have died. She was also the one who broke the jutsu and helped him get his memories back. Rin was confused and asked, who's Nan? I never heard of her. Angel slapped herself and said, I am sorry. I forgot you took over right before Naruto and I left, so you're not up to date on everything. I am not sure I know how to describe Nan. I got it. Remember the Jinchuriki for Rokubi from his memory. She the Jinchuriki, though it's more complicated than that, but I can't explain right now. Rin asked, so what are the plans now? Angel said. Naruto will return 1 month before the Rookie 9 graduate to join Konoha Academy. Then the party starts. Rin nods and said, I will have everything ready here. Angel looked outside and asked, how's the Uchiha? Rin said, crazy. He is determined to kill the man who took his revenge away. Everyone but his fangirls are worried about him. Angel said, alright, anything else I should know before I head back? Rin said, not that I can think of besides the fact after the first year of doing what Naruto asked about telling everyone about sealing it never happened Aegean so everyone ignorant. Angel nods and leaves in a swirl of flames. 20 minutes later the woman had left the village leaving without a trace. When the three women arrived back at Wave Country they all three sweat dropped and had one thing on their mind, Naruto. Why you ask? A bridge that should have taken 2 months to build took 1 week. Apparently Mass Cage Bun Shin speed things up. The Great Hopeful Heroes Bridge was finished. 2 weeks later Tsunade drew the seals on Naruto for the Sozo Sei's Genesis of Rebirth, and explained how to do it so he could start storing chakra there though instead of a diamond Tsunade drew 9 tails spiraling around the center on his forehead. 1 month after the bridge was built Dan and Nawaki arrived with 40 people to help with the new village. Flashback. Naruto was outside working with his Kajbunshin building new homes while the citizens of Wave helped with the construction of the hospital. It took 2 weeks for Tsunade to agree with everything she wanted in this hospital. Naruto felt a few chakra signatures approaching the new village. It was decided that the hidden village would be built away from the city Tazuna lived in by about half an hour away for civilians. 5 minutes for ninja. Naruto stopped working while his Kajbunshin continued to build homes and a few stores that were currently empty. As he went toward where the front gate had been built though no walls had been put up yet he saw a group of around 40 people. 30 adults and 8 children and 2 people he recognized. He smiled creating a Kajbunshin and sent it toward where the hospital was being built and said, so Dan, Nawaki, how's it going? Dan stepped forward and said, hello Naruto. It's good to see you Aegean. Allow me to introduce a few people that are looking for a chance to start a new life. These people are from the village of Seawave on the border of Cloud Country. Gato came through there about a year ago and did his thing so when we arrived and told them about you dealing with Gato and starting a new village they wanted to come and start a new life here. All of them are either merchants or store owners. Naruto who looked like he was 15 smiled and said, hello everyone. My name is Naruto Namikaze but don't let my age and look fool you. I am the leader of this village though it is still being built we have nearly 500 people already set to come here with around 25 already here and I am just trying to get some homes and stores built before more arrive. There are a few that are here already and they have the houses that are finished and have a name plate put on the front of the house. Everyone is currently either working here in the village or at the one you just came through helping build the new hospital that will help with the area. We plan to build an emergency hospital here with a clinic for minor colds and things like that once we get enough trained medical personnel. Until then we are going to use the hospital in the next town. If you would like to tell me what your business skills are I can help you get the layout of the village so that way you businesses will grow and be prosperous. One key to having a profitable business is location. A tall man stepped forward and said, my name is Trent and I am a blacksmith. This is my wife Elaine. My brother Alan his wife Deborah and Thea's son Corey. Naruto nods and said, okay, are you a general blacksmith or weapon maker? Trent said, both. Naruto nods and said, okay, you would want to be near the training grounds that are to be built but also close to the main gate so people leaving the village would come and resupply so I would think you would be happy about a block up. A clone appeared and Naruto said, if you will follow this clone he can show you the buildings we have there and just chose the ones you want with or without residents added to them. Trent asked, how much is this going to cost us first? Naruto sighed and said, the standard deal that we are offering everyone is this. For a standard business building you pay $40 a month rent plus whatever utilities you use for 10 years. After 10 years you have the option to continue to rent or buy the location for $5,000 so a business building will cost you around $10,000 in total at the end if you chose to buy. If you want one with a residence already added on then it will cost you $65 for the residence business for the 10 years and $7,000 to buy at the end of the 10 years. If you don't want your home and business to be in the same location, all homes are $30 a month with $3,000 after 10 years to build. So you see, we give a discount for having home and business together to save space, but some people like more privacy, so we give that option also. Now there is a standard tax paid on every person in the village of $5 a year that goes toward paying for the schools, hospitals, protection of the village, and helping keep the city beautiful, as well as the daily cost to keep the village running smooth. That's it. Everyone was standing there gapping at him, and he asked, "What?" They all looked at each other and said, "Where do we sign up?" Naruto smiled and said, "Well, just keep telling me what your businesses are and then I will help you choose a location. Most stores and businesses are not done, but once you pick the ones you want, I will have my clones and others who are working in the village work on finishing them first, and you're more than capable of helping since it will be your homes and business. Oh, the first month is free to help you get yourself set up, and your 10 years start next month." After about 30 minutes of getting everyone set up, Dan looked at Naruto and asked, "So where's Tsunade?" Naruto smiled and pointed behind Dan and Nawaki, and they both turned to see two women crying with a clone of Naruto who went up in smoke, and Nawaki seemed, "Sis," as he ran up to her and gave her a hug, though he looked the around 22, as did Dan, as Dan walked over slowly and said, "Hello niece, Tsunadeheim." Shizune hugged her uncle, happy to see him alive, and then shook hands with Nawaki, having only met him when they were in the academy once, and he was 2 years older than her, or should have been. Dan looked at Tsunade and she jumped into his arms, letting tears of joy steam down her face, and she looked at Naruto and said, "Thank you." Naruto said, "I protect my precious people and want to see them happy. All of them." Knowing Tsunade knew the hidden meaning as he turned and started to work Aegean. Once he was a few blocks away, a voice said, "That was nice, Narukun," as he felt a pair of arms circle him. Naruto turned and kissed the woman who was holding him and said, "I love you, Nan," as they stood there holding each other. Flashback end. 2 months after the bridge was built, the Wave Hospital and the civilian school was built and opened, with Tsunade being the head of the hospital and Nawaki the head of the school. 1 month later, the first ship of refugees from the mist arrived. Turned out the plans for a mass move did not turn out as planned, though the first ship did have nearly 150 people. Luckily, in the time after the bridge was built to that point, enough homes had been built, along with a few more merchants arriving to set up business. At this point, the village had nearly 300 people. 3 months later, it became official. The village hidden in the waves was official announced to the people of Wave with the election of the first council. 2 months later, the day Naruto had been waiting for arrived. Naruto was in the Namikaze Tower reviewing the layout of the village and the construction of new homes, as well as the records of those who wanted to be ninja. He sighed, rubbing his eyes, and he heard a voice say, "You know that someone told me that using Kagebunshin make paperwork go faster," making him look up and get wide-eyed as he sees his father standing there with his mom laying her head on his shoulder, and smiled at them. He was about to say something when the door opened and Nan came in with her back, pushing the door open and saying, "Sorry I took so long, Naruto-kun. I was teaching the basics of tree climbing to all who have been ninja elsewhere before leaving. Hope you're hungry." As she turned, holding a couple of takeout meals. She stopped and got wide-eyed at the sight of the two people in Naruto office and said, "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Namikaze. If I had known that you were here, I would have brought more food. When did you arrive?" Kushina looked at her and then at Naruto, raising an eyebrow, and asked, "Who is this Naruto?" Naruto said, "Mom, Dad, I would like to introduce you to Nan Uchiha, my girlfriend." Minato looked at her and said, "I thought Itachi killed the rest of the clan except Sasuke and Madara." Nan looked at Naruto, who nods, and she said, "I did." Making both wide-eyed, and Kushina turned and said, "Explain." To Naruto. Naruto sighed and Nan said, "The truth is that I was born a female and made a jinchuriki for the Rokubi. My father made me use a genjutsu like Tsunade and then made my life hell. I killed them after I tried to leave my clan, and my father had my best friend try to kill me, but not before he tried to rape me. My father, after he found out I killed my friend, had me locked into the Uchiha prison and tortured by my entire clan but Sasuke, and then they dragged me in front of Sasuke and my father like I was a common criminal. That was the last straw, and after all the hate and pain I suffered, I killed them all. Naruto came across me, faked my death, and gave me a cover story and learned who I was and what we had in the future." Minato rubbed his chin and asked, "What you have in the future?" Thinking, and Kushina seemed, you had with my son. As she realized who she was. Before Nan could blink, her and Kushina were out of the office and she found herself tied to a tree and unable to use chakra, and Kushina said, me and you are going to have a nice long talk. Nan paled and said, it's not the talk about, is it? Tsunade already explained it when to told me all about periods. Kushina paled and said, you poor child. Having heard Tsunade talks when she explained it to Shizune all those years ago. Flashback end. After a woman-to-woman talk they got together really well, having learned how hard her life was. A few days later came the day Naruto was dreading. Flashback. Naruto laid on the floor of a ceiling room in the hospital. Around the circle was Tsunade, Minato, Kushina, Nan, and Angel. Angel said, are you sure you want to do this? We can always take option B. Naruto looked at her and said, Angel, I have always fought to protect those I care about, and even though me and you have often not gotten along, I do care about you as one of my precious people. Kami gave you a job to do, and now that it's done you deserve some rest. I will call you for important and unimportant things like seeing how each other are doing, but I want you to have what you wanted for nearly 30 years. Your freedom. You can say that you have been freed since we came back, but you and I know that this has been a prison without walls. You have given me everything I could hope for and given me back the woman I love as well as my family. I don't want you to keep having to suffer, so please accept this. Angel looked down and said, all right kid, but when you go against Atatsuki and Orochimaru you have better call me to help and call me for the wedding also. Making Naruto and Nan both blush. Angel looked at Nan and said, you have better take care of him or I will break all laws and come back and take you out. Nan said, I want to do what Sakura did to him. Angel said, speaking of. Nan smiled and said, say no more. Naruto said, you can hurt her but don't kill her. I may hate her but she was a friend. Angel nods and said, remember, when you summon me call me by the name Angel and I will appear in my human form, and call me Kyuubi and I will appear in my nine-tail form. Naruto nods and Minato said, are you ready Naruto? Naruto nods and they began sealing the new seal on him while breaking the old one. After 25 minutes it was done and he passed out. Angel said, well, this is goodbye for me. Take care and call me if you need me. And she disappeared in a puff of smoke. End flashback. Naruto sighed as he looked at the mission report on what happened on the last mission he sent his father along with Kisame, Zabuza and Nan on. Flashback. Minato sighed as he looked at the three people who had joined him and said, so what exactly are we supposed to be doing on this mission? Naruto said we were to research the Fuma clan. Nan sighed and said, how the hell did you become the Hokage anyways with you always forgetting stuff? Minato said, hey, sue me. Nan shook her hands trying to control her emotions and said, look, from what Naruto knows Orochimaru is going to try and have the Fuma clan join him in sound since it should be building soon, so he wants us to try and get them to come with us instead. Minato nods and said, I don't get it. Nan leapt forward trying to get her hands on Minato only to be held back by both Kisame and Zabuza. Funny thing is they were both being dragged along, slowly but they were being dragged. A few moments later Minato yelled, hey, what's the hold up? You're all too slow. Nan blew her top and 6 tails popped out of her tailbone, picking both men up and carrying them as she chased the laughing blonde in front of her. After about an hour they arrived at the village where the Fuma clan was and they heard shouting. Looking at each other they nod and walk toward the direction the shouting is coming from and hear, shut the up you. And all four looked at each other as all of them had the same person pop in their minds, and they looked around the corner and saw a 12-year-old girl screaming at some kids and they shook their heads as they confirmed it. Just then a little orange-red hair girl walks up to Tayuya and said, Tayuya, you should watch your language before the elders get upset. You know that they are meeting with Orochimaru-sama. Nan narrowed her eyes along with everyone else and Tayuya said, I don't give a flying what that snake bastard is here for. He should go back to his hole and jack off to whatever he calls a. Nan snickers a little and stepped back a little, tapping the other three and said, look, if Orochimaru here then we can't go against him yet without screwing up the future too much. We can however go home with another recruit. Minato said, hell no. You're not bringing that girl back to the Wave Village. Nan said, payback's a bitch blondie. And walked around the corner where Tayuya was punching a building and said, hey Tayuya. Tayuya asked, what the do you want? Nan said. How would you like to blow this place and start a new life? Tayuya said. Not interest. Nan said. Really? Here I thought you would like a chance to rub it in your elder's face and show them you were better than they were for joining Orochimaru. Tayuya stopped and looked at Nan and asked, how do you know what he's here for? Nan said. It's simple. He is looking for people to experiment on and to be his own little slaves. He promises everyone power, and when they learn the truth about what he does, he kills them. It's what he always does. Tayuya is quite a moment, and Nan turns and walks around the corner, and the door to the city hall open up and Orochimaru steps out and said, it's good to see you have all agreed to join me. I promise you I shall make you the strongest clan ever. Ha 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 ha. Tayuya shook her head and ran around the corner and saw Nan leaning against a wall with 3 men leaning across from her, and she said, I will come, but you promise you will help me show them their mistakes. Nan smiled and said, count on it. End flashback. Naruto smiled as he finished the new seal he invented. It will make it as long as a certain someone is still in the village walls. Any swear words she said is automatically muted. Now how the hell does he get it on her as he wants to cry? Finally the first year was over for the new hidden village. Today there was a party, but first Naruto walked out on the balcony of the Namikaze Tower and looked at all the people gathered below and said, people of Wave. Today marks the 1-year anniversary of the founding of this village. A lot of things have happened since that day. We removed the tyrant Gato from power and seized all his assets to help the country recover and to prosper. We built the Hopeful Heroes Bridge connecting us to the Fire Country, allowing us to be able to trade quicker and for more things than we were ever able to do before. We opened a trade alliance with the very prosperous Spring Country and had over 1,000 people from the Land of Water join our village because of the bloody civil war there. We have over 75 businesses ranging from bookstores, to restaurants to clubs and bathhouses, one of, if not the best hospitals in the world, 4 schools, 2 for civilians and 2 for ninja. We have our village protected from an attack with not just 1 but 3 separate walls that make it where our ninja can attack from inside while our enemy can't get to us. Plus with the ninja we have who either left their homelands to escape evil leaders or wanting a new life have made our number of ninja to grow to 150 with 200 students in the academy at different levels. 50 per academy per age level, and we have another 100 starting their first 6-month tour in the academies in another few weeks. We have the world-famous medic Nin Tsunade here with her family, which from what I hear will be getting bigger over the next year as she will be marrying both of the men who love her, though at her age she needs 2 men to make her happy. One to rub all the brittle bones in her feet while another rubs her back, making everyone laugh and Tsunade to scowl. Naruto sighed and said, just kidding Tsunade. You are the world's best medic as well as someone I consider a grandmother, and I am thankful that you have agreed to not only help this village get started but to continue helping where needed. I have made it no secret about what I used to be, and you all know how her fiancé and brother were brought back to life when I made a deal with the Shinigami to kill the 4 men who have found immortality. In fact, in the lobby of this building is a plaque telling exactly what the deal was for all to see. I want you all to remember this, people. Live each day like there is no tomorrow, because not everyone gets a second chance at happiness like Tsunade has as well as me. We have a great village started here, and it is up to each one of us to keep making it better. As some of you know, I don't really look like what I appear here today as. Most of you know I am younger than what I appear, but you don't know how young. I have lived a life many would fear because of the trials I have faced, which has made me feel like I am 30 or better sometimes, and it is those trials that make me want to see this village become an example for the rest of the world to follow. Today I am going to tell you as well as show you what I look like and how old I am. You all know I use a jutsu to make myself look older and different for the sake of my family and friends, and have even taught a few here it. Before I do this though, I ask my girlfriend Nan to come up here. Nan looked confused while everyone looked on, and she walked up beside him, and Naruto smiled and said, as of right now I am as shocking as it sounds, 11 years old, making a few people gape like fish. And now Nan, the reason I asked you to join me. As he started to shrink and he got down on one knee and said, is to ask you that after I turn the legal age of 14 by almost every country in the elemental nations, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife for the rest of our lives, whether it be 1 day or 1,000,000 years? As he pulled out a box from his pocket and she gasped looking at it and held her hand to her chest and said, yes, I would. As she took the ring and the crowd below cheered and several shouted out, all hail the Shodime Namikaze and his fiancé. and the people cheered as the newly announced fiancés kissed. After they broke apart, Naruto mouthed, "Later." And she nods and he turned back to his older self and said, "Now that we have something else to be happy about, I would like to say that though our first year has been rough and we came out of it strong, we must continue to grow and get stronger. In 2 years I shall be stepping back from office as the Shadaime, and the Nadaime who has already been selected will be taking over. I may be great at business and working on getting this village going with all your help, but I have very little knowledge on how to keep it going, so I have asked a man who has plenty to help me with that. I now present to you the former Yondaime Hokage of Konoha, Minato Namikaze, to be the Nadaime Namkage, so that what he did for Konoha before Kyuubi came can happen here, and that is make this the most prosperous village in the world. Now when I say I am stepping down does not mean I won't be around. I plan to go to Konoha, who is not only the closest ninja village to us but who does 90% of all missions in the Fire Country, and ask them for an alliance, so that way if we are ever in need they can help us and vice versa, and that way if we need to go through the Fire Country to do trading or missions they won't think we are an enemy. Right now they are the big brother, but I think in a few years they will look like a midget and we shall be top dog. Now I think I have wasted enough of your party times, and all the casino and the bars are all open now, as well as the circus of the traveling merchants that have agreed to come here twice a year, so let's party." As everyone cheered. An hour later, Naruto and Nan were dancing in a little nightclub on the west side of town, and Nan asked, "Did you really mean that today, wanting me to be your wife, or was that for the village?" Naruto smiled and looked into her eyes and said, "That was for us." Nan smiled and kissed Naruto. A fox who had seen the announcement and the proposal smiled to herself as she watched them before she went up in smoke. Over the next couple of years, the hidden village of Wave continued to grow and become noticed in the world. However, the funny thing is that everyone believed that the Shadaime Namikage was Arachnar Kage. It was a rule that the Namikage name would be changed so that any enemies they had would have a harder time finding their friends and family, and everyone in the village agreed to it. Whenever the Namikage's name was spoken outside of the country or in the presence of strangers, that was the name they were to be called. The name they chose to hide behind. Why not? The village went from nothing in a poor run-down country economically with no hope to one of the biggest. The current village was nearly 3 miles wide and had nearly 7,000 people living in it. 75% of all shipping over the ocean was owned by companies in the village. Trade alliances had been set up with sea, spring, tea, and vegetable country. Because there was only 2 ways into the country, and those were by ship and by the bridge, security was beyond capable of catching spies. Seal markers were placed all over the island, and anyone who has more chakra than an academy student who came to the island was caught within 30 minutes of setting foot on the island, and they never made it across the bridge if they came in that way, because the village version of ABNU called Spiral would stop them and find out what they were doing. It also helped that Minato and Naruto, along with some help from Jiraiya, came up with a seal that would glow blue if you told the truth and red if you were lying, and nobody could fool it. Even women who were born liars about their age like Tsunade could not fool it. Speaking of Tsunade, she did marry both Dan and Jiraiya after they came to an agreement, though the exact details were never told, even to Naruto, though he was happy for them. In fact, Tsunade had a son by each over these years, surprising a lot of people, but was told it was a side effect of the deal made and everyone dropped it. Not because they were not curious, but because the deal that was made with death was so complicated and had so long and written in a language no one could read that they just had to let it go. What also was a surprise was another couple that had come along to be married. Shizune and Nawaki both became married. Naruto shivers every time he thinks of that couple. Nobody should love paperwork that much, and both of them talk about it like it's the greatest thing on the planet. Nan and him both have gotten closer and feel like they are the happiest they ever have been, but both realized something was missing. It's not the same without Angel, because without her, neither of them would be with the one they love, and they realized they had feelings for her also, and what she got out of the deal was screwed up in their opinion, and that realization result in where we find Naruto and Nan today. Both had agreed, and today they have used a jutsu that only the guardians could use and stand before the Shinigami. The Shinigami asked, "What is it you wish of me?" For the new Kyuubi and Rokubi to come before me together is somewhat unexpected. Speak. Naruto said, "Lord Shinigami, as you know, I was allowed to come back in time, and I made a deal with you in exchange for my parents and a few friends to return to the world of the living, and I have already sent the first of the men you wanted in exchange for this when I sent Sasori. As you are also aware, the former Kyuubi who we call Angel has returned to the summon plan, and I can summon her, but that is only a temporary solution. My future mate and I have both agreed and wish to ask if there is something we can do that you would allow her to return to the human world permanently as long as we live. You know by the order of Kami that we both have to have 100 descendants, and though I could choose any woman to be with in addition to my mate here, since it would be impossible for her to have 100 for each of us, and no one would be able to respect us and be trustworthy enough with our secrets as she would, so we ask for your help. The Shinigami looked at both of them for a few moments, looking into their soul, searching for some shred of deceit in either, and said, "There is something you can do, but it is not as simple a task as killing those men I requested." Nan looked at Naruto and asked, "What is it you wish of us?" The Shinigami was quiet for a moment and said, "There is an item in the world of mortals that should not be there. Only someone who was born of the mortal world may touch it without being destroyed, and I wish for it to be brought back to this world where it belongs. My predecessor stole it and hid it there, including making it where no one from here may touch it. If you can get it, I shall return this angel you requested back to the human world, but she will be an ordinary mortal unless she drinks some of the holy memory sake I made for you that will allow her to shapeshift and be immortal until she did the jutsu to end it. She will be just as this Tsunade or your parents are, but she will have the equivalent of one tail of her former power that she can work to increase. In exchange, there will be no summon boss for the Fox contract any longer until she dies or announces the next. You are the new Kyuubi in the mortal realm, but you are not the boss summon. Do you accept?" Naruto looked at Nan and he asked, "What is the item and why do you want it?" The Shinigami said, "It is a white orb that allows you to view anything within a certain distance of where you are based on how much energy you have. It was originally created so the Shinigami would be able to view humans better without actually going to the human world, but as I said, my predecessor was not happy about being replaced, so he took it to Earth to spite me. You have seen it in Konoha." Naruto was wide-eyed and said, "The Hokage's viewing orb." The Shinigami nods and Naruto said, "I agree. I shall get it then if that is the price for her to return." The Shinigami said, "Good, when you get it I shall return her. Be gone and let me rest." And both Nan and Naruto left. Naruto and Nan arrived back in their home. They decided to build one for themselves here close to his parents, but with enough privacy for themselves, and he looked at Nan and said, "Well, how should we do this?" A voice said, "How should you do what?" Making both turn and look and see Jiraiya standing there. Naruto sighed and said, "How long have you been there, Erozanin?" Jiraiya said, "I came by to ask if you would be willing to watch the kids for us when I saw you both disappear in a white flash, so I waited a few minutes to see what was going on when you reappeared." "So what is it?" Nan said, "We should tell him. He might be able to help us." Naruto nods and over the next few minutes he explained what was the deal, and Jiraiya rubbed his chin and said, "Okay, if that's all you need to get your girl back, then I will get it for you." Nan asked, "How?" Jiraiya smiled and said, "I got an idea, but you don't let Tsunade know where I am because she will kill me. I better be going." Naruto said, "Let me come with you." Jiraiya said, "No, if my plan is to work I need to go alone." "Take care, kid." Nan looked at Naruto and said, "I get the feeling he's going to do something to get himself killed." Naruto just nods his head. 3 days later at about 8 in the evening, the third was reading a pink little book when he felt a presence in the room and someone said, "Hello SSSS Sensei," making the third turn and pale at the sight of his former student Orochimaru in the office. It was not the sight of Orochimaru that made him pale, but the fact Orochimaru was wearing something from Mistress's secret catalog. The third asked, "What are you doing here, Orochimaru, and why are you dressed like that?" as he took a few steps back away from the desk. Orochimaru stepped forward, slowly crawling onto the desk, and said, "I just came to tell you that I realized SSS something Sensei. That SSSS something I wish to make your dream SSSS come true SSS Sensei." The third asked, "What dreams?" trying to figure some way out of this mess without alerting anyone. The sight of Orochimaru like this would not only raise questions about how he got into the village and the Hokage Tower, but also the third's sanity, but also why Orochimaru would be like this. Also the fact that he had not seen his student in a few years and wanted to know why he would appear now, so he played along. Orochimaru touched the view orb, bringing it to life, and he turned it to the ABNU men dressing room and said, "This one SS Sensei." as another Orochimaru came into view dressed in a different nightie and started kissing the first one and then walked toward the third, who got into a defensive formation. Suddenly the first one grabbed the viewing orb and jumped out the window while the other one started to attack the third. It was a simple taijutsu fight with Academy Tiahutsu, and Abnu burst in and helped the third, who was able to kill it with a kunia, and he quickly ordered Abnu to track down Orochimaru. About 10 minutes later Jiraiya appeared and the third was looking sick, and Jiraiya asked, "What's wrong, sensei? You look like you've seen a ghost." The third blinked and asked, "Jiraiya, where have you been? I have not seen you in over a year." Jiraiya said, "Sorry sensei, I was on my honeymoon. Tsunade finally agreed to marry me." The third was wide-eyed and said, "Kami, help me, the world's coming to an end. First one of my students comes and tries to seduce me while stealing the sacred viewing orb, while my other two sneak off and got married. What next? Minato coming back from the dead." Jiraiya paled a moment and said, "So Orochimaru was here. Did he get away?" The third said, "Most likely, since none of the Abnu can find him. Hell, even Kakashi and his summons could not track down Orochimaru. It's like he was not even in his body." Jiraiya said, "Perhaps he's not. Orochimaru may have finished his immortality jutsu." The third looked down and said, "I pray he hasn't. So what are you here for, Jiraiya?" Jiraiya reached into his pocket and pulled out a pink book and said, "It's my latest edition. I really need to get going. Tsunade going to kill me for leaving her with the kids." The third looked up and said, "Kids? What kids? Tsunade too old to have kids." Jiraiya said, "Apparently not, but keep that a secret. I better go, and if I get any leads on him I will let you know." "CYA sensei." The third was still in shock after hearing what his student said and was like that for about 5 minutes when he heard Kakashi return and said, "Sorry sir, but we were unable to track it down, or Orochimaru, sir." The third nods and said, "Kakashi, I want you to follow Jiraiya and tell me where he is going. He just told me something and I want to know where he is staying at." Kakashi asked, "What do you mean staying?" "Jiraiya never stays at a place too long because woman beating him." The third said, "That may have changed since he's gotten married and has a child now, but don't tell anyone that. I trust you to keep that a secret." Kakashi was wide-eyed and nods before jumping out the window and starts to follow Jiraiya. After about a day Jiraiya stopped and said, "So when are you going to quit hiding, Kakashi?" Kakashi appeared and said, "I was told to follow you in case you ran into Orochimaru and needed assistance." Jiraiya snickers and said, "Nice try, but you are trying to find out where I am heading so the third could know where me and my wife are living." "Sorry Kakashi, but I can't let that news get out just yet. I trust you and I trust the old man, but with Orochimaru appearing now and the fact I have heard a few things, I won't risk it." And he melted into a pile of mud, and Kakashi cursed himself, but he knew that if he used his Sharingan to see if it was really him, Jiraiya would have noticed. Sadly, he had to return to Konoha. The next day Naruto was sitting on the porch swing of his house when suddenly someone puffed into existence in front of him and landed on his lap, making him gasp for breath as it was knocked out of him. After coughing a few times he looked and saw Angel on his lap, and she looked around and asked, "What the hell am I doing back here?" A voice from the screen door said, "Welcome back to the mortal world, Angel. Come inside so we can tell you what's going on." As both look and see Nan standing there smiling. After all three go inside and close the door, Angel asked, "So what am I doing here and why do I feel different?" Nan slapped a piece of paper on Angel's arm and said, "Angel, I got a question for you, and that paper will tell us if you're lying, so don't, because this is important, and then I will tell you why you feel different." "Okay." Angel looked at Naruto and said, "Is this one of you schemes?" Naruto rubbed the back of his head and said, "Partly. Go ahead, Nan." Nan nods and said, "Angel, do you like Naruto?" Angel said, "In what way?" Nan said, "Love Angel." Angel said, "Of course not." And the paper turned red. Both Nan and Naruto looked at each other, and Naruto asked, "If there was a way for you to return here and also marry me and be a family with me and Nan, would you do it?" Angel said, "Kit, I told you I only wanted to have a kid with you to make Konoha pay. I have no romantic interest in you." The paper turned a bright red all the way through, and Nan asked, "Were you the same Kyuubi that was sealed in Naruto?" Angel said, "Yes." And it turned blue, and Nan smiled to herself and said, "Well, guess what, Angel? You get your wish. Naruto and I realize the only reason we are happy together is because of you, so we went to see the Shinigami and he has given you back your life, but you only have one tail of your former power, but you can work to get stronger. You are also mortal, but he said you could drink Naruto memory sake and then you would be like Tsunade or his parents. Naruto and I have decided that since we both need 100 descendants each, that we want at least 5 children for each bloodline. Now we decided that I would have all of them for my bloodline, and we want to know if you would have all of the ones for Naruto bloodline. After all, it's only fair since you created it in the first place. Angel said. You both are crazy. I'm not doing it. And the paper turned red and Naruto said, I'm glad to see you accepted. Now how does a triple wedding sound? Nan said. I am okay with it, but I am not doing anything until you're 14. I have had Tsunade give me a shot that is used to regulate hormones to help me control mine until then, and Yugito did the same since she does not want to be anything other than friends, thank goodness. Angel asked. So what will happen with the Fox contract? Naruto said. Until either you die or you announce a successor, there is no boss for the foxes. Angel bit her thumb and summoned a little two-tail fox and said, Kip, listen to me. I want you to go back and tell Gray that he is now the new summon boss for foxes and has 2 summoners. Me and my mate. The little fox nods and goes up in smoke, and Angel said, so what now? Naruto looked at Nan and asked, how did you get her back already? Erozanin has not returned yet with it. Nan snickered and said, yes he has. He's in the hospital right now. Tsunade felt him coming across the bridge and beat the hell out of him. He's in the hospital now, and I was one of the nins that had a front row view since I was on guard duty at the bridge when it happened, and he handed me the scroll with the item the Shinigami wanted. I then went to see him and came here the moment I returned, though I think he lied to us. Naruto asked. Why do you think the Shinigami would lie to us about what the viewing orb was for? Angel asked. Let me get this straight. You got him a viewing orb in exchange for my mortality. This would not happen to be like the one the Hokage has, would it? Nan said. The same one. Why? Angel smacked her head and sighed before saying, you're right, Nan, you both were tricked. That orb allows you to look at anything you want as long as you have enough chakra to reach what you're looking for. I bet he told you how the previous one took it away so he could not use it, didn't he? Naruto said. Yeah, that's what he said. Angel snickered and said, the Grim Reaper owes me $1 million now. I told him when he retired and announced Shinigami as the new master of death that he would find a way to get that orb so he could continue his ways. Nan asked. Is he dangerous or something? In a concerned voice. Angel said. To you and me, yes. Naruto narrowed his eyes and asked. Why is he dangerous to you and Nan? Angel said. Simple. He's the biggest pervert in all of history. He makes Jiraiya look like what you did to me when I first met the Hokage on this timeline while he is Jiraiya. Naruto slapped his head against the table and said, so now that he has that, he can spy on women anywhere. Nan looked at Naruto with a glint in her eyes and asked, what did you do to her, Naruto-kun? Naruto said, nothing, Nan dear. In an innocent voice. Angel said, oh really, Naruto-kun? I seem to recall you pinching my and making me moan from pleasure from the teasing. In a sweet voice. Naruto felt a dark pressure approach him, and he saw Nan had the look of female justice in her eyes, and she said, and you told me that you have never touched any woman besides me. Naruto said, well, only Angel, but that was just her. I swear. As he backed away. Nan narrowed her eyes and Angel said, what about that Sasama girl? You did touch her that one time. Naruto paled and said, that was an accident. Angel asked, who else has been an accident? As she began to pummel him into the ground. Echoes of misery were heard all across the village, and Tsunade screamed, Jiraiya, what the hell are you doing out of the hospital and peeping already? As she stormed off looking for her husband. A lone figure approached the gates of Konoha as a mist walked with him, and he was around 6 foot tall with blonde hair and blue eyes that were slitted. He had a pair of whiskers on his face. He was dressed in a pair of black pants with a blood-red stripe running down each leg. A holster with a weird seal was on each of his legs, as was one on his back hip. His chest was exposed, showing the well-toned body of someone who has worked hard with weights and exercises. He had a sleeveless blue jean jacket with the words, if you look into my eyes you can see the future. Your future is death. It had a fox skull in the middle of the saying that circled it, and the fox skull had a pair of slitted sharingans with 3 commas, and it also had veins popping out of the side. No matter which way you looked at it, the eyes were always watching you, and a seal that was hidden on the inside made it look like the eyes were slowly spinning. There was a tattoo on his left arm of 9 spiral, and at the end of each was a different item. One was a slug, frog, weasel, cat, fox, a sword, a scroll, a puppet, and a picture of the Shinigami. On his left hand was a glove with the fingers cut out, and a ring was his ring finger, though anyone who had seen that type of ring knew it belonged to Atsuki, and the glove had a weird seal on it. On his right arm was a seal that had a circle around it, and underneath that seal was a line running along his arm till it got to his wrist, and the number 100X was inside a seal on his wrist. On his forehead was a spiral right in the center of his forehead. Over his heart was another seal, though this one had the number 60 with an arrow pointing down to the number 40, and on his stomach there was a burned and destroyed seal with the letters RIP Kyubi over where the seal was. On the back of his neck was a seal that was directly over his spine. As he approached the gates, the guards said, "Who are you and what are you here for?" The figure looked at both men, and their eyes started closing before, and both men fell to the ground. The figure smirked to himself and walked into the village as the mist continued to follow him, and people were looking at him and getting out of his way. The mist, for some reason, that was following him was so thick you could not see what was inside of it. As he traveled, it was always just barely rolling at his feet, so you could not see his footprints. A few ABNU appeared, and the moment they locked eyes with him, they passed out, making everyone who could read the words on his back believe that they were dead. When he finally made it to the Hokage Tower, the third Hokage was standing outside the building, having already been notified of what was happening, and he asked, "Who are you and what do you want here?" The figure said, "Hello, old man. I told you I would return, and here I am. I do have one question though. Why did all those ninja faint?" Making everyone sweat drop as he pointed behind him. The third was confused as the mist slowly started to clear away, and 4 figures could be seen standing in the middle of the mist. 3 of the figures had what appeared to be swords, and on closer inspection identified them as Zabuza, Kisame, and Raiga. The figure in the middle was dressed as a Kage, though with the hats on and the mask on his face you could not see what he looked like. Naruto smiled and said, "Sorry about that, Hokage-sama, but the Namikage here asked at me to escort him to Konoha. He wishes to talk to you about an alliance. Since I was on my way here, he asked that I lead the way." The third asked, "Who are you?" Naruto acted as if he was hurt and said, "Read my stomach and you should know the answer." The third looked and got wide-eyed and asked, "Naruto, is that you?" Naruto nods and said, "Been a long time, old man. Allow me to introduce the Nadaime Namikage of Wave, K's Tsunami. This is a special joke if you can figure it out. Minato means either port or harbor, and Su means harbor, and Nami means wave." The third looked at the man who bowed a little and said, "Hello, Sandaime Hokage-san. I have heard many great things about you from this young man, and I would like to open negotiations between our 2 villages. I am sorry for my entrance, but I could not afford for someone to try and hinder my arrival. These are my bodyguards: Zabuza Momochi, Kisame Hoshigaki, and Raiga Kurosuke, and of course you already know our escort Naruto Namikaze." The third said, "It is an honor to meet you, Namikaze-san, but if I had known you were coming, I could have been better prepared for this meeting." Kase said, "That's fine, Hokage-san. I did not come here to try and have smoke blowed up either of our asses. Perhaps it would be best if we continued this talk somewhere more private. If you don't have time today, me and my guards will gladly stay at a hotel until you have time in your schedule." The third was quite a moment and said, "I believe I can fit you in right now, though your guards will have to stay in the lobby." Kase said, "That's fine, but I would like my associate here join us in negotiations. I trust his advice. Had it not been for his suggestion, I would most likely have tried to open negotiations with Suna or Aiwa." Motioning toward Naruto, making everyone who was listening in unable to understand what he was up to. The third nodded and said, "Very well. Follow me." Naruto nods and follows Kase, who follows the Hokage. Kisame and the others all stand outside in the lobby, making the secretary fidget by their presence. When they arrive in the Hokage's office, the third asked, "So what is it you are exactly interested in?" Kage said, "Very simple. As you have most likely heard, a few years back a group of people took control of Wave Country and freed them from the tyranny of a man named Gato. We then gave them the option to try and recover themselves or let us help them. With business connections Naruto here had as well as a few other connection I and a few others had we helped the people build the great bridge that connects our island to the fire country. The people decided that they needed some way to protect themselves, so we got to work on building the bridge and getting people to live there. So far there have been no problems between us and your ninjas that I am aware of, but I would rather work out an agreement that would be beneficial for my country ahead of time. The third asked, "What exactly do you have in mind?" Cage said, "Well, what I have in mind is basically an open alliance. Trading of information on possible threats to the other as well as giving support in the event of a disaster like an attack on the village or a natural disaster such as a fire for you or a tidal wave for us. We also have a trade alliance for unrestricted shipping of items to and from each of our countries providing the item being shipped is not something dangerous. We can also trade ninja for training, though it can only be a genin team to restrict access to village secret jutsu. I am aware that our village does have some jutsu that were originally from your village. Some of our nins were at one time missing nins, though none were from Konoha that I am aware of." The third sat quietly and looked at Naruto, who was listening to it all and looked like he had something on his mind, so he asked, "Do you have anything to add, Naruto?" Naruto sighed and said, "Yes, I do actually. Wave has a number of bloodlines now. I believe that it was over 100, though that was a rough estimate at about the 1-year anniversary. These people are afraid of being hunted down again because most of them came from the mist, but some come from other countries. They have a life there, but some of the bloodline users came from other countries also, like Cloud, Iwa, Rain, and I even think there might be 1 or 2 from the fire country. I would like to see, for the sake of those people, that they cannot be forced to go back to their original countries if they do not wish it, and that if they chose it they would be officially listed as bloodlines of Wave. Several people I care for fall into that category." The third thought and asked, "I can't speak for other countries on that, Naruto." Naruto interrupted him and said, "I understand that, old man, and I misspoke a moment ago by letting me feeling on this get in the way. What I would like to ask is that if approached by anyone to force the bloodlines to return to their original countries, Konoha official policy be that it will not be involved in such acts either by ally or enemy nations. I think if Konoha were to make just that stance of no involvement in it, then other countries would have to find other ways to do it, and with the sharing of information we agreed on, then we could prepare to protect them. In fact, if you agree, I have information on one such thread of a Konoha bloodline that is in the works. I know this is low of me to offer this to you in such a way, but you see, both of my fiancés have a bloodline and both would be hurt if they were forced to return to the country they left from. It scares them so much that one of them refuses to tell me what her bloodline is and where she is from in fear of what would happen," as he looked down at the end. The third listened to him and felt the emotions in his voice, but then something caught his attention and asked, "Naruto, why do you have 2 fiancés?" Naruto sighed and Cage said, "It's like this, Hokagesan. Somehow the Kyuubi that was sealed in Naruto died. He does not remember how it happened, and in fact he had amnesia for several years from around the age of 6 to the age he was right before we saved the wave, which was around age 9. Tsunade was able to save him and bring back his memory. As a side effect, Naruto chakra coils were being pushed to the limit and threatening to break. Jiraiya, who had been with Tsunade at the time, designed the seal on Naruto's chest there and sealed most of the chakra away. His body was a mess at that point, and Tsunade had to teach him one of her secret medical jutsu. There were a few side effects, and based on her observation, Tsunade believes it is the emergence of a new bloodline. What the exact details are she was not for sure, but she said it had qualities of the Sharingan, Byakugan and others, though to what extent she is not sure, and has asked him not to tell anyone about it unless he absolutely trusts them. The only reason I even know about it is when Tsunade had closed off a wing of the hospital to run the test and I received a complaint about it. Tsunade said that if it is a new bloodline emerging, then he should practice polygamy, and since he actually saved the lives of both girls, they won't take no for an answer." The third listened and was shocked, but decided to try and get more information and asked, "What do you mean, Tsunade?" Naruto said, "Bakken and Erozanen decided to stay in Wave for a while, and Erozanen trained me, and Bakken did also, and helped create a hospital for the country and has been teaching basic medicine and first aid until properly trained medics can take over full time." The third nods and asked, "What's those other things on your arm, Naruto?" Naruto looked at his arm and said, "How I got it I don't know, but I do know what they are. The frog, slug, cat, Weasel, and Fox are all summoning contracts. When Arozanin had me sign the Toad contract since he said it's what Dad would have wanted and it appeared on my arm. I already had the Fox contract somehow though the boss is an eight-tail fox who said Kyuubi died. I got the slug contract from Tsunade in case something new comes up with this possible bloodline so she can research it and contact me. The cat contract came from a friend and the weasel came from one of my fiancé. The one with the picture of the Shinigami I don't know since it was there and Jiraiya told me not to use it in case it might be the sealing jutsu Dad used. The one with the scrolls is like a massive storage seal what I can store all kinds of scrolls and items in. The puppet has two puppets sealed in them though how and why I have them I don't know and the sword actually has my weapons for quick access that won't fit in my weapon holsters. The third was speechless and gapping and after a few moments asked, "What about the other ones on your arm?" Naruto looked at Kage who said, "That was a gift for Naruto from me. It's a gravity, chakra weight seal. Normally a person could only go up to about 10x normal gravity and have to stop but I guess it has something to do with his healing factor but he maxed out at 100x. The third shook his head wondering what the hell happened and asked, "What happened to Vixen and Shinro?" Naruto looked down and said, "I am not really sure. Angel, one of my fiancé was Vixen's daughter and she said that some men attacked us and they were both killed while I was ordered to take her away and flee. Something happened in that battle because it was the last thing I remembered before the first time I met Arozanin and Bakken. Angel stayed with me during the time I had amnesia but under orders from Tsunade she won't tell me what I did or saw because it might actually impair my ability to recover the memories if I ever do." The third sighed and said, "I see. Most likely it was some kind of mind control jutsu or perhaps something to do with the Kyuubi." Naruto said, "I wish I knew. I don't like having a past and not know it. At least I got Angel and Nan." The third's ears perked up thinking it might be Nan Uchiha and asked, "Nan who?" Naruto said, "Nan Chiyo. My fiancé." Kage cleared his throat and said, "If you are asking about all the seals on Naruto I will tell you about the last one. It's a security seal that we placed on him to make it where no one would be able to go into his head and gather information on us. Jiraiya came up with it so you can ask him the exact details whenever you see him again. Naruto is a major security risk for our village but without his help and all we would never have been able to build the village. In fact that is why we had made him the honorary Shadaime Namikage. His true strength and skills may not be that of a Kage but his ideas and leadership skills were and with the way he helped us gather people and build the village it only seemed right. He took all the sadness in his life from his childhood and helped the people believe in themselves and each other. In fact it was him who came up with our village's motto." The third was stunned a moment and looked at Naruto before asking, "What is your motto?" Kage said, "To protect what is most precious to you. That is when you will find true strength. Make the village your most precious and together the village will gain true strength." The third smiled to himself and said, "Sounds like you helped create a great village Naruto. I hope I can see it someday. So what do you plan to do now?" Naruto sighed and said, "Well, I have a few questions I need answers to and I figure that this is the only place I can find them. I want to find out why my father was willing to save this village. From what I can remember of my childhood it was not worth it so I would like to see it again now that I have traveled the world and realize a few truths. I would also like to try and make a few friends here. I know that is going to be hard considering that I was a Kage of another village though from what Arozanin told me that the wave country's ranks don't become official until they enter a Chunin exam. Is that right?" The third said, "Yes, that's correct. In fact that makes it easier on us to get you back into the Leaf Village." Kage said, "Hokage-san, I know you only just met me today but I have a request. Should Naruto life here be the same as it was before I would like to make it where he is a joint ninja of both of our villages like someone who is in a political marriage would be. That way if the villagers can't get over their hate of Kyuubi he can return to Wave and live happy. To the people of Wave Naruto is a hero and after everything he has done for us I don't want to see him treated as trash." With a little hate in his voice. The third said, "I can but I would need to put some restrictions on Naruto at first to ensure he is not a security risk for us. I'm sure you can understand." Kage nods and the third said, "All right Naruto. Is there anything else you feel that I should know before I make my decision on this matter?" Naruto was quiet and looked at Kage and said, Should we tell him about that now as a sign of good faith on behalf of Wave or wait? Cage said. It's your call, Naruto. Consider yourself an official ambassador for Wave to Konoha should they approve of our alliance, and I trust your decision. Naruto nods and said, remember when I mentioned about a threat to one of the bloodlines of Konoha? From what we discovered, it seems Orochimaru has created some jutsu that allows him to take over the body of another permanently by transferring his mind and soul to another body. A girl that joined the Wave about 6 months ago from the Fuma clan said that her clan had joined Orochimaru and he used it on a friend of hers. He tried to kill her because of what she saw, but she escaped. She told us that Orochimaru bragged and claimed he would soon have the perfect body to steal all the jutsu in the world, just 3 more years, he said. We confirmed the Fuma clan is doing something that is strange according to the team we sent to check this out. They were stocking up weapons and food. She said that it took her about 4 months to find out about the new village in Wave and decide to come there. After getting this info and checking a few things, there is only one known bloodline that would give him that. The third closed his eyes and said, the Sharingan. Cage said, and since there is only one Sharingan user left in the world, we figured it means that he plans to use that jutsu on him next year. At least that is what we believe based on the info we have. We told Jiraiya all this and he said he would check into it but would have to get proof before he alerted Konoha. The third asked, what exactly is Jiraiya relations to your village? Cage said, Jiraiya trained Naruto here and spent his free time with Tsunade. Tsunade taught him chakra control beyond what he had already learned. Jiraiya agreed that if we allowed him and Tsunade a home that could be a vacation home or a permanent one, then he would keep his ears open for any threat to our village as he does Konoha under the rules that he won't betray one village for the other. Only reason he taught Naruto was respect for his father. The third nods and looked in thought a few moments and said, okay. I like the ideas you have for this alliance, though I would like to do a little test if you don't mind. You say Naruto has full rights as an ambassador for your country, correct? Cage said, yes. Naruto has my faith as well as the faith of the council and the people of Wave. The third nods and said, when do you plan to take the first Chunin exams? Cage said, we were actually going to wait until the exams were here in Konoha so that way our first Genin teams are not captured or killed. I was thinking of sending up to 5 teams to enter the test since this exam will be important to us in our future to not only show you who we wish to ally with but also other nations that we are not some little helpless village that can't defend itself. The third nods and asked, when is Naruto marriage? Naruto said, the day after my 14th birthday, old man. I plan to request a mission to return there or request leave for 2 weeks at that time to be with my fiancés. The third nods and said, then it's settled. I will agree to allow Naruto to attend the academy to get to know people around his age. Since he has prior training, he can skip the first year providing he can pass a simple test I will administer myself. He will then be placed in the class that will graduate next year and be placed on a team that he will have to work with until the Chunin exams. If at the time of his wedding I find nothing that questions my faith in your village, I would like to send guests to Naruto wedding to view your village. Cage said, I don't believe that would be a problem, though they will have to have a ninja from our village that must be with them when they are not at their hotels for village security, but the guests have to be approved by Naruto. It is his and his fiance's special days, and I know that there will still be some who see him as the Kyuubi and we don't want them to disrupt his special day. The third nods and said, very well. I can agree to that. If they like what they see when they are there, I will agree to the terms you have stated, and it will be announced at the beginning of the finals of the Chunin exams providing at least one of your candidates make it to Chunin. Cage said, that is acceptable. If there is nothing further, I really must be returning. My wife gets upset if I am away for far too long. Our only child grew up without us being able to see him because of a betrayal by our home village that cost us much of his life. We don't get to see him much, but when we do, we cherish it and also cherish the time we have together. As he stood up and offered his hand. The third got up and shook his hand and said, it was a pleasure to meet you, Namikaze, with a smile on his face. Cage bowed and turned to Naruto and said, I will make sure your fiancé are well taken care of, and should you need anything, send word and I will have it sent to you. As he gave him a handshake. Naruto smiled a small smile and said, thank you and take care of everyone. I guess I will see you in about a year and a half then. Cage nods and walks out of the office. The third smiled as Naruto turned back to him and asked, "What do you have planned for residence?" Naruto said, "I still own a lot of businesses here and I just need to talk to the woman who has taken care of my properties while I was away and I can have my place." The third nods and said, "Okay, I am going to cast a genjutsu and I want you to break it." Naruto smirked and said, "Might as well forget it. They don't work on me." The third looked confused and asked, "What do you mean?" Naruto said, "My eyes. Whatever it is that happened to me makes it where all genjutsu are useless against me. It automatically dispels them. In fact, it broke Tsunade's and I seen what she looks like under hers. It was not until I mentioned something I saw that she looked closer at it and realized it." The third asked, "What else can it do?" Naruto said, "Well, it's active always. For one thought, I found that there are two levels to it. One where my eyes are blue, I can see everything around me in a perfect circle for 100 feet with no blind spot, but I can't see through things. I can also copy nearly any jutsu like the Sharingan as long as my hand seal speed is faster than whoever I am copying. Arozanin had me get to the point I can do 30 a second to make full use of this since almost no one can be faster than that." The third was wide-eyed and then asked, "What else? You said it had a second level." Naruto nods and said, "The second level one found is when I actually channel chakra into my eyes, they become red and I can see up to a mile away and through things, but I can't see chakra pattern and I can still copy, but the farther away a person is the slower they have to go for me to be able to copy. I also found that my eyes can create a powerful genjutsu world. Bakken told me it was like the Tsukuyomi world of the Sharingan that I call Kitsune world, though I have only ever used it on my fiancée to make one of her fantasy come to life before we actually have." The third giggled at that and asked, "Anything else?" Naruto thought and said, "Well, I got my healing factor and then I got my other fiancée's bloodline, though I got that from a blood transfusion to save her life." The third asked, "What is it?" Naruto smiled and said, "She can shape-shift. It's like an advanced henge that actually makes her body become whatever it is she appears to be. She sometimes turns into an animal or another person to pull pranks on me. Tsunade said that mine was actually a mutation of hers. She figured that since I did it before I had my memory loss, that Kyuubi must have altered it a little and she was going to see if it was transferable along with the others she thinks are bloodline. That woman is scary with needles. I swear someone should call her Mosquito from all she took, though who or what she did with it I don't know and don't want to find out." Shivers. The third nods and said, "Can you show me it?" Naruto smiled and said, "I already am." As he slowly starts to shrink down until he's about 5 feet 5. The third was amazed and Naruto then turns back like he was and the third said, "So how long can you do that for?" Naruto said, "It's all mental. Until I actually tell myself to change it want. I can even add things to myself. Last year we had a costume party for Halloween and I changed to look like a 4 feet tall Kyuubi and Angel changed to look like my dad and sat on my back while saying she was king of demons." The third laughed as the picture popped in his head and said, "Okay. I guess you pass. I could test you more, but I don't want to waste any more time than I already have. Report to the academy at 7:30 a.m. and I will get you signed in. I will have to have an ABNU follow you for security reasons, so I'm sorry about that." Naruto nods and said, "Please don't tell anyone about my bloodline. I fear what would happen if word would get out." The third saw the pleading look and said, "Okay, Naruto." Naruto said goodbye and left, and the third thought, "Minato, perhaps I can make up for my past mistakes now." A man at the front gate sneezes and Zabuza asked, "Are you okay, Namikaja-sama?" Kage said, "Yeah, someone must be talking about me. Good luck, son." Naruto walked down the street ignoring the stares people were giving him. To him these people were nothing anymore. He had a life and a family now, but he did have a few friends here, and that is why he would save them from what is to come. As he continued on his journey, he felt the team of Anbu following by rooftop. All three of them. The fourth was dressed as a civilian following about a half a block back. He approached an apartment building and shocked the guards when he bit his thumb and wiped some blood and walked into it. Everyone knew of the security for these apartments and knew only way someone could enter if they were in a selected shinobi's list allowed to enter. For the person they were following was a disbelieving experience. The one in civilian cloths, thinking the seal was broke, went over and tried to get in but found he could not, ensuring the seal was working. Naruto smiled as he stood around the corner from the door as he knew that raised a few eyebrows and he started climbing the stairs. A few minutes later he knocked on a door and the door to the apartment opened up and Naruto had to hold back the snicker at the sight of Kakashi without a shirt and him holding his mask over his face and a pair of boxers with dogs on them. Kakashi raised an eyebrow and asked, "Can I help you with something?" Naruto said, "Yeah, Rin get you out here." Making Kakashi look at him and said, "I'm sorry but you got the wrong apartment buddy. Nobody named Rin lives here." Naruto snickered and said, "Really Kakashi, you mean to tell me you've been sleeping with your old teammate for what is it 3 years now and you still have not figured it out?" Kakashi was shocked for a moment. First this person knew who he was and then by the claim that the woman he had been seeing was his dead teammate. How low can people get? Kakashi released a little killer intent and said, "Listen buddy. I don't know who you are or what you think but you are pissing me off." Naruto said, "Forgive my manners. Naruto Namikaze at your service Kakashi. Now if you would be so kind as to look at the woman behind you I believe you will have a heart attack." In a mocking tone. Kakashi was stunned. This was his sensei son. He felt a hand on his shoulder and heard, "Let him in Kakashi-kun." And he turned to look and passed out at the sight of his teammate who was dead standing there dresses in the bathrobe he got his girlfriend for their anniversary. Naruto smiled and said, "Nice to see you again, Rin. Sorry for interrupting but I got Anbu on my already so I need to find out which apartment I am in." Rin smiles and picks Kakashi up and sets him on the couch and Naruto walks in closing the door. Rin said, "Let me get dressed and then we can talk," as she goes toward the bedroom. Kakashi groaned a few moments later and Naruto who was sitting at the table drinking some tea said, "Morning pervert." Making Kakashi look at him and look around trying to figure out if it was a dream or what. Not seeing Rin or his girlfriend he asked, "What was that earlier and where is Nermi?" Naruto snickered and said louder than necessary making his voice go down the hallway, "You could have come up with a better name Rin. I can't believe Kakashi here never looked at your name in a mirror because you left it in plain sight." As he looked toward the hall going toward the bedrooms. Kakashi who was ready for an attack listened to what this guy said and though, mirror, Nermi backwards would be Imran. His eyes got wide-eyed and thought, "I'm Rin." As he looked down the hallway and saw his old teammate coming out of the hall and he asked, "What the hell's going on? You died during the Kyuubi attack." As he uncovered his eye trying to see if it was a henge or genjutsu and saw that it was not one. Rin smiled and said, "Not died Kakashi. Murdered and as for how I am alive our godchild is to blame for that." Pointing toward Naruto who waved in a Kakashi pattern while taking a sip of tea. Kakashi looked at Naruto and asked, "What, how, when, why," and a few other random incoherent questions. Naruto smiled and said, "Well if you want answers I can humor you. Rin, if you don't mind could you fix us something to eat and get a bottle of sake? I got the feeling we are all going to want a drink before today's over." Rin nods and said, "You don't have Kyuubi anymore, you sure you can handle the sake?" Naruto snickered and said, "I've been bar hopping every Friday night for the past 3 years with my fiancés and the others back in Wave. I can drink this town dry and still not get drunk." Rin smacked her forehead and asked, "What the hell has Minato-sensei been teaching you and how did he get it by your mother?" Kakashi who had came over was again floored and said, "Wait a minute. Will someone please explain to me what the hell is going on and how people I know are dead and what do you mean he does not have Kyuubi?" As he looked at both for answers. Naruto sighed and said, "Fine, I will tell you but you can't tell anyone including the Hokage. If he were to find out he would be pissed and everything we worked for would be ruined." Agreed. Kakashi nods and Naruto said, "It's like this. You remember you old teammate Obito?" Kakashi nods once looking at Naruto and Naruto said, "A man by the name of Uchiha Madara, the same Uchiha Madara who killed the Shadaime Hokage recovered his body after dad took you and ran away to get treated and repaired his body. He then used a forbidden jutsu that transfers his mind and soul into another body and took control of Obito's body. You with me so far?" Kakashi nods and said, "So you're saying that Obito body is alive but someone else is in it? Now what does this have to do with anything?" Sounding impatient. Rin came in with some sandwiches and a bottle of sake and glasses and set them down while saying, "Everything Kakashi. He's the man responsible for the Kyuubi attack." Making Kakashi wide-eyed and looked at her and Naruto. After he calmed down a little, Naruto said, "Now I will skip why and how he did it for now since you want to know how Rin and the others are alive. The truth about how Rin died was not what you believe, Kakashi. It turned out Danzo found out about mom and dad, and when dad went to do the sealing before the hospital wing was destroyed, he sent one of his assassin to kill mom. Rin was the nurse who delivered me and was treating mom and was killed fighting the assassin. Mom was passed out from exhaustion and was an easy target afterwards." Kakashi asked, "Why would Danzo want you mother killed?" Rin said, "Think about it, Kakashi. If she was alive, she could have taken Naruto back to Whirlpool or somewhere else, and Danzo would lose his ultimate weapon he wanted to create." Kakashi thought, and that did seem like Danzo, and he asked, "So how are you alive?" Naruto poured himself some sake and said, "Cheers." As he drank some and Rin drank some, and Naruto said, "I need to use the restroom before I continue," as he got up and went down the hall. Rin smiled and said, "Sorry for not telling you sooner, Kakashi. A lot of people have a lot written on what's going on, and I could not screw them over to tell you until everything was ready. I wanted to tell you, but I could not abandon my friends for my own selfishness." As she poured herself some more and some for Kakashi. Kakashi looked at it, thinking everything over, and took the saucer and drank it, trying to clear his head. Wrong choice, as he suddenly grabbed his head in pain before he felt a pressure point being hit by Rin, knocking him out. When Kakashi awoke, he looked around and saw he was sitting on the couch, and he looked at Naruto and Rin, who were talking, and he listened to them trying to get over the head rush. Naruto, who had his back to Kakashi, said, "Come join us, Kakashi. The headache will go away by tomorrow." Kakashi sighed, wondering how Naruto knew he was awake, and walked over and stood beside them and asked, "What the hell was that?" Naruto smiled and said, "My last life. It's what started all of this, allowing Rin and the others to come back to life. Kyuubi offered me a deal and I took it. When we went to the Shinigami to inform him, and when he reviewed my life, he gave me a gift to bring a few people back to life, and in exchange for making sure 5 people died. From my memories, you should be able to tell who they are. Orochimaru, Hidan, Sasori, Kakuzu, and Madara. Kami also got involved the deal since he was tired of the tailed demons being involved, so I have to track down all of them and have them transfer their powers. Including me, that leaves 6 left for me to find." Kakashi thinks a moment and said, "When did you come back to Naruto?" Naruto said, "Early enough to piss on your book." With a smile. Kakashi looked at him and for the first time at first pissed off, and then realized something was different. His forehead protector was gone and he was seeing with both eyes, and chakra was not being drained. He jumped to his feet and ran to the bathroom and looked at his face and saw that his Sharingan eye was black and not active. He tried to channel chakra to it and found it responded, and then he shut the chakra off and it returned to black. He smiled a little and went to turn when he knocked something off the sink counter. He reached to catch it and cut his finger since it was Rin's razor she shaves her legs with, and he sets it back on the counter and washes the blood off and was about to get a band-aid when he noticed it already healed, and he raised an eyebrow and went back into the dining room and asked, "What happened to me?" Naruto said, "Basically you got a part of my bloodline," as he drank some more tea. Kakashi looked at him and asked, "What do you mean?" Rin sighed and said, "Tell you what, Kakashi. Picture anyone in your mind that you know what they look like, either man or animal, and then think the word shapeshift." Kakashi looked at her and soon he started to change and turned into Pucken, and Naruto said, "Kakashi, you have a sick relation with him." Kakashi thought a moment and returned to normal and asked, "What was that?" Naruto said, "Shape-shifting is part of the Kitsune bloodline. You also have increased healing and a simple form of immortality." Kakashi looked at him and asked, "What do you mean by immortality?" Rin said, "It means you won't grow old. Your body is healing itself back to its prime at the age of 22, and then it will stay that way until you cancel it or until you are killed, which is a little harder now." Kakashi was wide-eyed and asked, "Why?" Naruto said, "Simple. I have changed the future already, though the one major event will most likely still happen, and with it the second major problem." Kakashi thought a moment and said, "Orochimaru and Sasuke." Naruto nods and said, "Yes. You and Rin are the only 2 people besides myself in the entire village that knows what is going to happen." Kakashi was quite a moment and asked, "What do you plan to stop that?" Naruto smiled and said, "Simple. Before I came here today myself and the Nadaime Namikage had a meeting with the Hokage and opened an alliance proposal that will take effect around the time of the Chunin exams. Let's just say that the teams that are coming are going to be ready to aid Konoha along with the Namikage who is going to be by the Sandaime. Kakashi asked. Who is the Namikage Naruto? Naruto smiled and said. Kei Tsunami, or you would know him as Minato Namikaze. Making Kakashi fall on his butt. Kakashi asked. Why are you telling me all of this and why did you give me this bloodline and memories? Naruto sighed and said. It's like this. Jiraiya, Tsunade, Dad, Mom, Rin, Zabuza, Nan, Angel, Kisame, Yugito, Shizune, Haku and Raiga along with myself will not be enough to change the future of the village. I need help, and since almost all of those who know believe you could help get the leaf ready without raising too many questions and we all trust you. Kakashi asked. What do you think I could do that others couldn't? Naruto said. Tomorrow I start at the academy. I plan to befriend the rookie 9 and help a few of the key members that will make the others follow. Ino, Sakura, and Sasuke are out for now. You however can use your rivalry with Guy to help him get his team and also help get a few others you think will be of use in the future, but you need to do it as simple training or challenges or something without raising too much interest. You could also arrange joint training with the other teams when we pass the academy. I also need someone to tell me when people are drawing attention to me. I already told the Hokage that I was trained by Jiraiya and Tsunade to move most of the things I know away, but a few things can't be passed off like that. Especially if people find out what I did during the years the Hokage thinks I had amnesia. Kakashi asked. What did you do? Naruto smiled and said. Ever hear of Arachnar Cage? And he saw the wide-eyed look on Kakashi's face for a moment as he realized exactly what he meant and said. So that's why you had Puckin not tell me who you were. Naruto nods and said. I want to say thanks for saving me. Danzo men nearly cost me my life. Had it not been for Nan I would have been killed. Kakashi asked. Who is Nan? Naruto tensed a moment and said. Nan is one of my fiancé. Check the memories and find the one of me and the Jinchuriki of Rokubi. She's Nan. Kakashi thought a moment trying to get the information and said, I see. Why did she save you then? From your memories you never met her before that day in the future though she met you. Naruto sighed and said, you want the truth. If I tell you it then you will not be able to tell anyone because if you do I will kill you. As straight face as he could be. Kakashi looked at Naruto trying to see any deception and saw none and questioned if he wanted to know the truth and said, fine, tell me. Naruto nods and over the next 30 minutes explained about the Uchiha plan to create a second Jinchuriki, their involvement in the Kyuubi attack and its real reasons to attack. The secret law of the Hokage, the secret to gaining the ultimate Sharingan, the truth about the Uchiha massacre and why Sasuke was spared. The last mission the Hokage had for her and about the truth of Itachi. The truth about who Angel was and why she did it. When it was done Kakashi was wide-eyed and unable to speak. Finally he said, if I was her I might have done the same thing. I don't condone it but I understand it. I won't tell as long as she does not kill Sasuke. Naruto said. She won't. If she does I will forfeit my life, however if he betrays the leaf all bets are off. Kakashi said. I suppose that's fair enough, besides the man he wants to kill is you. Giving Naruto a pointed look. Naruto said. I know, but I hope with the cover story I told you he will change his desire for revenge to one of protection and respect. Especially after getting to know me a little. Kakashi nods and said. Well, is there anything else I need to know? Naruto said. You can give Rin here that ring you bought and set a date. Word of advice. Next time you buy a present or engagement ring, make sure it's not at a store she manages. I will see you around Kakashi. As he got up and left. Kakashi swallows a lump in his throat and looked at Rin who was blushing and looking at him. He said. Well Rin said. Just shut up and give me the ring. You never were good with words. Kakashi nods and the makeout begins. Naruto soon finds the apartment that will be his for the next year and a half. The next day Naruto arrived at the academy dressed with a pair of black pants like the ones he wore the previous day except they had a white stripe down the side and a white shirt and a black sleeveless jacket with a picture of a tidal wave approaching a village and the words natural disaster on the back in red. When he approached, the third looked at him and saw he still had that glove on his hand and asked, "What's with that glove, Naruto?" Naruto held his hand out to the side and suddenly a kunai appeared in his hand and said, "I have 3 seals in it and I can make either of my kunais or a shuriken appear. It's a seal I designed when I was learning some of Dad's stuff from Shinro." The third asked, "What do you know, Naruto?" Naruto looked around and saw several people looking at him and asked, "You mind if I use that training log as an example?" The third looked at Naruto and said, "Sure." Naruto dropped the kunai in his hand and another appeared a moment later and he threw it, and the next thing anyone knew there was a yellow flash and an explosion, making every single person in sight wide-eyed, including the Hokage, who was gaping as Naruto had just obliterated the training post with a Rasengan that he still held in his free hand as he walked back over, putting the kunai back into his back holster and powering the Rasengan down. As he swooped down, grabbing the kunai, he dropped and pocketed it and said, "Nothing much." Naruto held a bored look on his face as everyone were trying to figure out what to think or do. The third asked, "How good are you at those, just you?" Naruto said, "I'm not really sure. I know I learned the Rasengan in a month from Erozanin and Hiraishin in about 6 months from Shinro before he died, though I don't think my version is as good as Dad's. Dad's notes on it said something about a feedback problem, though I have not encountered it yet, so I don't know. I have only had to actually use it once, and that was when I saved Angel's life when I was 6. I keep myself up to date on practicing it so I can do it if needed." The third shook his head, trying to get over the fact Naruto was possible a genius, and he realized Naruto would most likely never have reached his full potential here in the Leaf due to their hatred. That thought saddened him and he asked, "Can you teach how to use it to others, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Can, yes, will, no. I consider it a family jutsu and will keep it in my family jutsu. I heard a rumor that there was someone else who knew it, but I heard he died a few years back besides Dad," as he saw everyone shocked faces in his view with his bloodline. The third winced at that and said, "It was never confirmed if what he did was indeed the Hiraishin, though it was suspected. It was also never confirmed that he died." Naruto nods and said, "Well, I would like to find him someday to find out how he figured it out, or his version if it's not the actual jutsu, and compare notes on it," making the third nod, though he had a million other thoughts going through his head. The third said, "Well, let's get you registered, Naruto." Naruto nods and walks into the academy, and Inoichi said, "What do you think, Shuja?" Shuja said, "I don't know. If that is only a sample of what he can do, then he could be a great ally or our greatest enemy." Shikaku said, "I am surprised by what he has accomplished so far in his life from what the Hokage told us last night during our meeting. I see now why he wanted the clan heads to make sure Naruto was treated fair." A voice from behind them said, "I am forced to agree with your assumption also. Even Hiyash seemed to have gotten in on this idea, and if what my bugs are telling me is true, all of his chakra is his. None of Kyuubi's." Hiyash, who had his eyes activated, started to walk toward the group because he had read their lips as Naruto was walking into the academy, who smirked as he had heard them. Hiyash, when he got by them, said, "I am afraid I have to agree. All the chakra in his body is currently his. Also, the fact that both jutsu he used back there did not make his chakra reserves show any signs of use. It was like it was completely restored instantly. His coils are also larger than the Hokage's, making everyone wide-eyed." After dropping off a folder to the administration office, the Hokage led Naruto to room 301 and opened the door and said, "Hello, Iruka. I'm sorry to interrupt your class, but you have a new student joining you today." Iruka was smiling until he saw the whiskers and said, "I see Hokage-sama. Who are you, young man?" Naruto walked to the front of the class and said, "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. I am the son of Kushina Uzumaki, the Rokudame Rasenkage of Whirlpool, and Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. I am also the former Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. I like training precious people, writing books, playing shogi, bugs, eating new foods from around the world, and both of my fiancés. I like people who can be themselves and do not judge based on other people's ideas but their own. I dislike fangirls." Suddenly a howling noise was heard and Naruto paled and said, "Hey, you with the dog, what clan are you?" Hiba looked at him and said, "Inuzuka, why?" Naruto looked around frantically and asked, "How many women in your clan are between 13 and 40 and don't have a boyfriend or husband or kids?" Hiba looked confused and said, 1. Why? Suddenly the window was blown open and Naruto said, I take it that's her. The third asked, what's going on Naruto? As Naruto jumped from flat-footed to sticking on the ceiling with chakra to avoid the girl who dove where he was a moment ago. Naruto bit his thumb and rubbed it across the scroll seal on his arm and said, hormones. And popped a pill bottle and he flipped off the ceiling as the girl climbed the wall and to the roof to get him and he said, Tsunade said that since I was 11 years old my body has had one other side effect of the Kyuubi dying. If I am within a mile of someone with heightened senses and that person is a female and does not have a mate and is of childbearing age. Shit. As he used replacement with Mizuki who was pounced on by the girl. The third said. Then their mating instincts kick in and try to make you theirs. Figuring it out. Naruto nods and replaces himself with Sasuke and said, Tsunade could not figure out how to stop my body from producing it and said it will most likely go away after I marry my fiancés, but she did create a drug that makes my pheromone I am releasing obsolete. Problem is getting the person to take it. As he backflips out of the desk causing the girl to hit Sakura with a clawed hand ripping her shirt. The third starts doing hand signs that Naruto copies and both shout out, mud encampment wall. And both spit out a wall of mud that covers the girl and Naruto opens the bottle and said, hey, help me get her to open her mouth dog boy. Kiba was too busy laughing his off until he heard the dog boy comment and saw his sister was about to break free and walked over and twisted her ear making her cry out and Naruto shoved the pill down her throat. A few seconds later the girl moaned and Naruto and the Hokage released the jutsu and she asked, what the hell happened to me? Naruto asked, what's your name? The girl looked around and Kiba said, her name's Hana and she my bitch of a sister and you want to know what happened. You went into heat and tried to mate with him. Pointing toward Naruto. Naruto said, nice to meet you Hana and thanks for the help as he held out his hand to Kiba. Kiba shook it and said, Kiba. The third looked at Naruto and asked, why did you not mention that before Naruto? Naruto said, hey, I have only encountered 5 women in that time I ever had to worry about and the last time was a year ago. I thought that it might have ended but apparently not. If I known it had not I would have mentioned it. The third nods and said, I want you to send a summon to Tsunade and ask her for a detailed report on that and your other unique abilities in the next week Naruto. I won't show anyone else but for my own private records. Naruto nods and said, sure old man. Making a few people snicker and Iruka said, show some respect D brat. As he caught himself. Naruto said, I only show respect to people I don't like or don't know well enough. The old man here I consider a grandfather to me in a way so I refuse to call him anything else. I call Tsunade, Bakan and Jiraiya, Erozanen. Hell I even call Princess Kazuhana Koyuki, Yukie and Kisame Hoshigaki, Sushi. I'm sorry if you don't like it Iruka-san but you got to realize something. Just because someone is a leader of a country or a clan head or someone important does not mean they are not human and sometimes wish to be referred to as such by their friends and family. Hell, if you want me to show respect and proper manners to people then you may call me Namikazesama since I am the son of 2 Kages as well as an apprentice of 2 Sanins at one time as well as the only reason this village is even standing today since my father could not actually kill the Kyuubi but had to seal it inside his newborn son exactly 2 hours after I was born, but where my father failed I somehow succeeded. Taking off his shirt enough to show the broken seal and the tattoo of Rip Kyuubi making everyone who were afraid a moment ago when he mentioned the Kyuubi being in him question themselves. Naruto said, and I saw the look you had on your face the moment you saw the whiskers on my face. Looking at Iruka and Mizuki one of the curses I have to bear because of my father saving this village so I know you already called me demon in your heads because you're like most people in this village. Can't see the jailer who makes sure the prisoner is locked away because of your hate. Even when the jailer executed the prisoner. Most likely someone you cared about died during that creature's attack. Well guess what? My father died stopping it and my mother was murdered by a member of the council so I could be made into a weapon while my father was saving this village. I came back to this village to find out what was so special about it. My father and mother both died protecting it and only thing I seen so far are mixtures of fear and hate. As he turned and started to leave. The third who was shocked about the outburst as well as the new information and said, wait Naruto. You said your mother was murdered. Do you have any proof and who did it? Naruto sighed and said, I had proof. Danzo ordered her death, and the man who actually did it tried to kill me when I left the village at age 5. He even bragged about it when he tried to kill me. Angel jumped in the way and took the kunai for me. I pulled the kunai from her back and killed the man. It's how I first got her bloodline. Sai, I'm sorry I made a mess of your classroom today, and I will come by your office tomorrow, old man. If you wish for me to leave the village, I will. It appears I got my answer I wanted to find out. I returned to see one of the few people I care about and also hope to make new friends, and I learned I will never be more than a demon to the people of this village. The sad thing is I don't feel hate for you and the rest of this village. I feel pity for it. And he left as a swirl of flames, shocking everyone. Iruka for his part was stunned. He just tried to teach the kid a lesson in being respectful, and in the course of a few minutes the kid confessed about killing someone, one of the village's top S-rank secrets, about why he was hated, and admitting the reason was not there and making everyone see him in a new light. He felt guilty now since he had nearly called the boy a demon. He looked at the sad eyes of the Hokage and asked, "Is what he said true?" "About his mother, I mean." The third said, "Iruka, I believe every bit of it was true." Danzo was the first to say he had no family at the council meeting, and he would have been the only other person who knew what the Yondaime was actually doing. In every council meeting he tried to get control of Naruto to be turned into the village's weapon. It saddens me and makes me question why I remain leader of a village full of demons. As he walked out of the class, sadly ignoring the shocked looks on everyone's face. Outside the classroom, a dog masked Abnu thought, "I have to hand it to you, Naruto. If you ever want to give up being a ninja, you can be one hell of an actor." Back inside, Iruka looked at the confused faces of his students and said, "Class. Since we have had so much ruckus and I need to have that window fixed, I am canceling classes today." Everyone got out of their cheers quietly. Normally they would have cheered and been happy, but with what they have seen and heard, they had a lot of questions. Over the next few hours, the Hokage was greeted by Hiyashi, Inoichi, Shibi, Shuza, Sume, Shikaku, as well as a few others including Iruka. Some wanting him gone, but a few others with questions and comments. The thing is, no one noticed the bird sitting on the window sill sleeping there the whole day, or when it finally tried to fly away only to fall and go up in a puff of smoke. The next day when Naruto walked into the Hokage's office, he looked like he was ready to leave the village, and the third looked up at him and said, "What are you doing here, Naruto? Aren't you supposed to be at the academy?" Naruto looked confused and said, "But I thought after what happened yesterday everyone in this village would have demanded I leave." The third said, "There were a few people, but most who came to see me yesterday actually asked for you to stay in the village. I guess not all hope is lost for this village." With a small smile. Naruto smiled a small one and said, "Perhaps not, old man." The third chuckled and said, "Before you go, why did you not reveal that to me about your mother?" Naruto sighed and said, "I asked a lot of you when I asked to help protect my fiancés. My mother's dead, and unless the Shinigami appears and offers me some kind of deal, I will never see her again. I have a future with my fiancés, so I trade what's left of my revenge for now to protecting them. If my path ever crossed Danzo, he's dead, but I won't go looking for him." The third nods and said, "At least you better than the Uchiha. He plans to kill a man because he killed the man who killed his family." Naruto asked, "So what now?" A voice from behind him said, "Well, now, you need to get you to the academy. Almost the entire class is wondering if you are coming or not." As Naruto turned and saw Iruka standing in the doorway. Naruto looks at the third, who said, "Get to class." Naruto smiles and said, "See you, old man. By the way, look at the monument." As he started to leave, both Iruka and the Hokage monument and were wide-eyed as the mountain had been painted, but not in a way to make it look like graffiti, but in a way to show the Hokages as they were. Pride and love for the village. Though the third chuckled as he read the billboard above. In bubbles above each of their heads, the Hokages each had a saying in them. The Shodimes had, "Why could my bloodline not be something better than controlling plants? My wife makes me rake the leaves after I use it." The Nadaime had, "Let's see, if I were to make it where every Friday the entire village has to wear white, I can have a wet t-shirt contest." The Sandaime had, "I wonder when Jiraiya next book will come out." And the Yondaime said, "Why can't anything exciting happen instead of paperwork?" Iruka was wide-eyed and asked, "How?" Naruto said, "The village needs to up its security patrols, old man." Iruka looked at the Hokage who said, "Leave it up for the rest of the week, then take the billboard down. Leave the paints since he made them look lifelike." Iruka turned to Naruto and said, "Come on, brat," and took him to the academy. When Naruto walked in, everyone looked at him and he noticed a few people actually smiled at him. Things were changing for the better, though the key coming off Mizuki will have to be dealt with later. Iruka said, "Okay class, now that our new student is here, let's do a quick review on chakra and its applications," making a few people groan.